Yeah, I mean, there was effort put into getting us.
It's open space. Yeah. Or many people. The meeting I went to was just me.
Hello. Good. How are you?
Yeah, I just drove. Yeah.
Either way, it's fine with me.
Anything having to do with
Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you.
You followed her direction.
I'm going to be swearing at me soon. Yeah. Thanks. I might have to sign this. Which I did. I relented in the end. But no one ever called. So they were right. Never happened. But you get on. I used to have flights that were still
I didn't know.
Thanks. Thank you. So,
And I did. Yeah.
I started watching the national stuff, and then they just went to bed figuring. I just find out tomorrow morning. Kind of knew where it was going. This weekend I celebrate.
Yeah.
November 11th. National Day. Oh, you okay?
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Yeah, my brother's November, my mom was November.
See nothing about response. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't.
No. I'm just gonna need to see what these are additional.
You will set up.
Prepared to do that, yes. Make sure that they're plugged in and ready to go.
This is what they should have done.
Sure, I mean, this is the Springfield response.
Yes, what to get started.
Yes.
Not just, not that,
Yeah, yeah.
like this initial report, we're not going to use initial.
Yes.
So you're not. You didn't have to bring your several copies.
No, I didn't.
We had that for a printer.
Well, Steve, the Stonefield's response repeats my comments verbatim.
When they say local government,
They would be a bad idea to have a set for everybody.
the original.
Just embarrassing.
If it's possible, just do-
Yeah, I didn't bring,
No, I understand that. Yes.
Mine's already ready or not? And we're not, I'm pulling out.
Oh, this is.
In accordance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, be advised that a notice of this meeting was made by posting on the bulletin board, town hall, and mailing to the officially designated newspapers a list of the meeting dates annually, indicating that this meeting would take place at the town hall at 7:30 p.m. on Wednesday, November 6th. Roll call, please.
Corey Biller.
Here.
Allison Canfield.
Here.
Michael Cohen.
Here.
Deborah Nevis.
Here.
Craig Sakamondi.
Here.
Sujata.
Here.
Srini Vijay.
Here.
David Cosgrove.
Here.
Michael Zion.
Here.
Gaston Halper.
Here.
And Beth Saul.
Thank you. First order of business is the approval of minutes from September 4th, 2024.
Madam Chair, if I may, that resolution is currently circulating among our board professionals and applicants
We're on the
team as
minutes
well.
first.
My apologies, we're on the minutes. I got ahead of myself again.
That's okay. Yep. So we'll finish on the minutes first and then I'll allow you to.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so on the minutes from 9/4, did anybody have any corrections or edits to those minutes?
I had a possible edit on line 156. It says something about the house being in extreme despair, and I thought maybe it was supposed to be disrepair.
Thank you. I think we will make that change.
Okay.
The emotional well-being of the home is
Yes.
probably speculative on our part.
Yeah.
Disrepair seems more apropos. Thank you. On line 156, with that change, do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Okay.
Thanks, Srini, seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And those who are not present would abstain from the vote. Meeting minutes of 9/4 with the correction are approved. Now, our second order of business was the memorialization on application 24002. I turn to you, Council.
Madam Chair, I'll sound a little bit similar to the way I did about a minute ago. This particular resolution is circulating among the board professionals, and will then go to applicants' council. We anticipate it'll be ready for adoption at the next meeting, which I understand is next week. And we may also, by that point, have for adoption the concierge pediatrics resolution, which is also currently circulating amongst our board professionals and to go to applicants' team as well. So that is our goal for next week, to have to make up for the one we don't have to.
Great. Thank you for that clarification. So we'll note that the memorialization will be carried until completed. Okay, thank you. Moving into our next and only application for the evening. This is application 24003, the matter that was previously carried from September the 18th. This is for preliminary and final site plan approval, the High Center for Living Judaism, and applicant's attorney, there you are. Good evening.
Good evening.
I invite you to welcome us back, and as needed, I may or council may give just an overview of the process for having application, witness testimony, and opportunities for public engagement.
I was not here the last year. I watched the video. Do I play school?
Yes, and let's turn your mic on just to make sure we have that on record. Okay.
So yes, you're qualified, having watched and heard the video from the last meeting. And so we'll be continuing. I don't anticipate we'll complete this hearing this evening. So long as you were certified and qualified by the time you voted, you'd be fine.
Okay.
But we should have a certification, and I can sign it at the appropriate time to memorialize. But we are putting on the record that you're qualified to continue to hear the application this evening.
Just one moment. I think there's just a clarification on whether we have both sides of something that is being distributed. I think we have only odd pages or something like that. Okay. So we'll get that
So
sorted.
double-sided copier issue.
Fix that one.
Okay. Thank you. And with that, we can open where we left off. And again, when it gets to, before we're moving into hearing any witnesses, I'm happy to just provide a little bit of the process or have council give the overview.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman, members of the board. Good evening. My name is Michael Levine. I'm an attorney with Fox Rothschild here this evening on behalf of the applicant, High Center for Living Judaism, Inc. Subject of the applications 165 Old Short Hills Road, Block 2306, Lot 11 in the township's R3 residential zone. It's a 3.32 acre property. The applicant is seeking conditional use approval and preliminary and final site plan approval in order to construct a house of worship on the subject property. We've had one hearing on this matter. It was on September 18th. At that time, we had extensive testimony from our civil engineer who went through the site plans that we had submitted. answered a series of questions from the board members and also a series of questions from members of the public. At that time, we did not yet have the benefit of independent engineering review memo from the board's consulting civil engineer. In the interim, we received that report. And so I think the first item of business would be to call back our civil engineer, remind him that he remains under oath, and then have him go through the issues and comments and questions that were raised in the board engineer's review memo. I know that she's here with us this evening to ask follow-up questions and seek clarifications. As a result, not only of board engineers' input and questions, but also recommendations and input that we had received from the board's independent traffic consultant. John's also prepared to share with you some exhibits that show some tweaks to the plans that we've made in response to those questions. So I think it would make sense to call John back to tie up the loose ends that remain with regard to his civil engineering testimony.
And if I may, Madam Chair, by tweaks to the plans, you mean the civil engineering plans, the site plans, correct?
Correct.
So, sir, he remains under oath, and I take it his license remains in good standing. So I take it the board will continue to accept him as an expert in the field of civil engineering.
We will do so. So just to sort of echo back what the applicant's counsel just mentioned, at the first meeting that we had in September of 2024, we did hear extensive testimony. The board had opportunities to ask questions. The public had opportunity to ask questions and make comments at that time. But because we didn't have the benefit of our board engineers' comments, we'll be speaking to those tonight. So we're having you come back and re-testify to additional items. Following your testimony, the board will ask any remaining follow-up questions per what you spoke about. At that point, the public will have the opportunity to ask questions of the witness on the things about which he is testifying tonight. If it's things that had previously been testified to and then already responded to, we're asking for the sense of time, and because the session has already closed, to only be asking questions pertaining to what his testimony is about. And as mentioned, we will also be, I think, moving into the transportation traffic issues
That's
tonight
correct.
as well.
Yes, we're prepared to do that.
If we similarly get through that testimony, we'll do board questions and public questions regarding traffic tonight.
Very good. And just before we get started, I know that, and we appreciate it very much. I know the board took some efforts to facilitate the presentation, both for the board's benefit and also the members of the public. I know that there's a smart board.
Yes.
And we have, we'll be able to tie in and show and share exhibits electronically.
Correct.
We also have a hard copy as well, to the extent that that's helpful. If we maybe position the tripod in the appropriate place, wherever you think it's most beneficial, we'll do that. And the last thing was, we had a long dance with the microphone back and forth.
extra microphones were provided?
But we would have a second microphone. I think she said there were 2 microphones available.
And many batteries.
Is there one here or? Actually, that's what Alex had said. No, okay.
I think we have it.
I don't, and you don't know
I don't.
where additional microphones are? Alex,
This one.
you got one?
Oh,
It's karaoke here, yeah.
There we go.
Great, let's attempt to turn it on. Thank you, Allison.
I think there might be one more.
What's being distributed here, is this something that's available as well, or in copies? I hear that.
you hear this one?
Yeah, I hear something. Oh, this one.
We'll try.
John, that should work. Yeah. So the tripod's over there. Is that a good place for the hard copy?
I think that's fine, and hopefully we can see that, and maybe if I could request that you angle that a little bit towards the board, and that if we need more towards the audience, just so that folks can see. That one's a little bigger. So and I did also inquire it can't be shown on the Zoom because it's a YouTube, it's not a Zoom. So if folks are watching it streamed, they can only just look at the room. But also all the exhibits, you will announce the name and number, and all of these exhibits are available on our website, so people can pull up and look if they're viewing remotely. Can we have that one facing us?
Sure.
Yeah, I want the public to be able to see one and us to be able to see one collectively.
Is that the best we can do, you think?
Are you gonna be able to see that? I guess unless it's in the lower right corner. Okay,
You guys see
yeah,
that?
okay, thank you. Okay,
So John, again, I'll just, could you just reacquaint the board just with your name and your professional affiliation, who you're with, and your role in the application, please?
Yes, good evening. John Ferranti. I'm with E2 Project Management out of Rockaway, New Jersey. And civil Bachelor of Science, Master of Science, Civil Engineering, professional engineer. Been qualified many boards throughout the state of New Jersey.
And you were accepted by this board and your license remains in good standing, correct?
Yes,
Okay, and I think the chair will continue to accept you.
we will,
thank you.
thank you.
So John, have you had a chance to review the engineering review memo that was prepared by Martha Callahan, the board's engineer, dated October 9th, 2024?
I did.
And if you could, please, I'd like you to do two things. If you could just go through her report, it begins on page 2 with her site plan comments, and just provide the applicant's responses to those. In some instances, it's just kind of a statement of fact. Maybe we could just kind of confirm or reiterate. And to the extent that it requires a response from you, if you could provide it. And also, I think you have a total of 4 additional exhibits?
Yes, we
So-
prepared 4 exhibits tonight, and it's the compendium of all the comments that we received from the board's professionals, and also the public. So we took the liberty of sort of grouping all those comments and creating the 4 exhibits, which we'll present tonight. And we tried to address a lot of those concerns with our proposed revisions to the plans, which I will introduce as well.
Thank you. And have we received these exhibits?
No, these are exhibits that we brought with us this evening. So we'll mark them for identification. We'll leave them on file.
Okay. Thank you. And you'll also share them electronically so we can upload.
Yeah, let me make a note so I don't forget that.
Thank you.
Yes.
But I think we're starting with the memo, correct, Council?
Yes, if it's your practice to identify the board's memos as separately as exhibits. you can do that.
Not as an exhibit.
Oh, just-
He's going to be addressing it.
The substance, yes, that's absolutely right. All right, John, you can proceed with that. please.
Thank you. With the board's permission, we're sort of conceding a lot of the comments we have no issues with and we'll address. So do you want me to go through all the comments or just the ones that require
I think
text?
if you could
testimony?
go through, if you could go, not to belabor any, especially ones that we agree with and will comply with, if you could just tick through all of them. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll do that as quickly as I can. Initially, Ms. Callahan provided comments to the site plan. So the comments, comment number 1, which was, I think, discussed the last time, a lot of the professional, even the planner, noted that the intersection of Parsonage Hill Road and Old Short Hills Road, the road has encroached on our property, and the comment basically wants us to address that, and we have no issue with.
Road opening permits from the county and the Dover DPW will be obtained, correct?
Correct.
If there's approval. Okay, thank you.
And item number 2, she correctly makes a note that we will require a soil erosion sediment control permit, and we're okay with that.
Stipulated.
It was stipulated, yes, that we will be submitting for that permit. The comment number 3, she agrees with our calculation of the sanitary flow for the site. However, she would like us to study the existing flow where the sanitary main that we're tying into on the Old Short Hills Road, and we agreed that we'll provide that study to confirm that sewer main has enough capacity for our site.
Page 2, number 3 stipulated.
Yes,
And is that kind of standard operating procedure for an approval, for a project once it gets approved, just to confirm the underlying assumption that the existing conveyance system has capacity to accept the flow?
absolutely. The item, comment number 4, the lowest level of the building will house classrooms for daycare and preschool, and the applicant should provide testimony regarding whether the outdoor play area is contemplated. We spoke to the applicant and the applicant's architect, and they agree that the school will need a playground. And I'll point out too on the drawing where we've chosen to provide that playground area.
Would it make sense, Counselor, to do that now?
Want to do it now?
I think it does make sense unless for some reason that's cumbersome.
No, not at all, actually.
So before we get started, I just want to confirm the electronic copy of your exhibit that you have on the smart board. Is that the same as the hard copy we have over here?
Yes, and it's dated November 5th, 2024.
And is it in the legend, is it captioned Exhibit C-1?
Correct.
And say today, dated November 11th? I'm sorry.
November 5th. Yes.
If I may, I'd like to just mark this for identification. I think we're only up at applicants A1, are we not, Mr. Warren?
Yeah, I think everything else was previously submitted
Correct.
site plans, so I don't see any other exhibits.
So I'll just mark that for identification as A1 with today's date.
And again, that's, did you say C100?
C1.
C1.
Okay, and it's, just give us a title of it. What is it?
Site grading, utility, and sanitary plan.
Is it different than what was submitted with the application material?
It is.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
If you, sort of the board would like to give you a quick overview of the exhibit, or just answer the one comment and move on.
It's up to the applicant.
And you give just a very quick, brief overview of what you're showing there, and then specifically answer the question.
Correct. So what you have in front of you, that it's the site plan that was presented last hearing in September, and we made a few changes to address the comments that we received. A lot of the comments were from, as I said, from the board's professionals, the traffic consultant, the engineer, the planner, the board itself, and the public. And the comments really focused on several areas, and I'll just summarize them so that everyone is refreshed. The sidewalk on Old Short Hills Road, the driveway off of Parsonage Hill Road, the playground, which is we're just discussing. There were comments regarding fire truck and waste truck access to the site triangles from the driveways, and landscape. There were questions on landscaping, and one of the board professional asked whether there's sufficient access to provide maintenance and to the basins. And the waste storage area, there were comments in the waste storage area. So what we've done, we modify the.
So, John, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
John, I apologize. So you've kind of given us the brief thumbnail of the various things that have been addressed in Exhibit C1. So let's go back to the review memo then and pick up where we left off, which was item 4 and the specific question about an
Item number 4 was the question regarding the original site plan we presented did not have a playground shown. We are currently showing a playground, and it's located on the south side of the upper parking lot. Again, more for to remind the board, the facility, it's has primarily 2 levels. The upper level is more for the worship access to the main level of the facility, and the lower level, which is served by the lower lot, has the school, and that will require the play area. So the play area is located on south side of the upper parking lot. That will be accessed to the driveway. Now, ideally,
just to pinpoint it a little bit more precisely, when you say, is it southeast, southwest?
correct. It's directly south of the upper parking lot, located in this lower left-hand corner of the property.
And I know that your plans show a couple of things. They show a required 25-foot buffer to residential. Is that located outside of that buffer?
Yes,
And there's also a more stringent requirement of, I believe it's a 40-yard setback. Does it meet that requirement?
it does.
I think you'd also, your plans show, and you had testified last time, that there is an existing drainage feature there and an associated riparian buffer.
Correct.
Is the buffer shown on the plan, and is that
Yes.
play area outside of that buffer?
Yes, we've located it so we don't infringe on any of those buffers that you mentioned. And so the location and the shape, it's not obviously a rectangle. We try to, having all those limitations of setbacks and so forth, this became sort of a logical place for the playground.
What are the dimensions?
It's 900 square feet, roughly odd shape, but say call it nominal 30 by 30.
And is it enclosed in any way?
No, it's enclosed by a small 4-foot high aluminum ornamental fence to protect the children, as well as a curb on the driveway side. And the landscape drawing will show that we provided additional buffering around the playground.
And you go through that on the landscape plan?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't you move on then to item number 5?
Yeah, item number 5, it points out that there's an existing well on the property, and it's located centrally on the upper parking lot, and I'll point to it on the south side, roughly in this location. And the comment was that for that well is no longer needed. It has to be closed properly per the DEP regulations. We spoke to our applicant, and he would like to maintain that well and use it for irrigation of the extensive landscaping that we have on the property.
So if we end up doing that, then we'll certainly do that and get any permits or approvals that might be required in connection with that. If he decides that that's not workable or not part of the plan, then yes, we would decommission it in accordance with DEP requirements if ultimately they decide not to use it.
We have that stipulation.
Yes.
Thank you.
And there was kind of a two-part suggestion there when we do agree to the tank sweep to confirm no underground storage tanks, and to the extent one's found, to decommission that as well in accordance with the applicable regulations.
Correct.
Got it.
Item number 6, it is primarily a statement. The board engineer reviews that environmental impact statement was prepared. There are no wetlands, rare species or wildlife, historical trees, 10 endangered species on the site, and the open stream on the southwest corner of the site as associated with riparian buffer. However, we are not encroaching on the riparian buffer. Number 7, the encroachment on Parsonage Hill Road curb and pavement to the northeast corner of the property should be legally addressed, and we had talked about that at the last hearing. We said, yes, we will provide the easement and get that sorted out with the county.
If I may, Dr. Parsonage Hill, local,
County.
County, excuse me, yeah, not state, but county. Do you know yet whether the county would prefer an easement or a dedication, or that's still to be determined?
That's to be determined.
Okay, but you'll agree, whatever's required by the county? Correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
The item number 8, the proposed construction activities require installation of temporary chain link fence at the perimeter of the site perimeter. This does not alleviate the requirement of silt fencing. We are providing silt fencing as required by the soil erosion sediment control. We will require a permit, so we have provided that, and it's shown on our soil erosion plan.
As well as a temporary chain link fencing will be provided?
The chain link fence, there is a fence that's existing around the property. A chain link fence per se during construction, we believe it's not required with the soil erosion sediment control fencing and any additional snow fencing that the contractor may choose. That should be sufficient. We don't believe that a construction fence is required, but we'll be glad to provide if the board so requires.
Martha, can you confirm it?
I should have cited the ordinance. There is a township ordinance that requires a chain link fence around a major development.
Just temporary during construction
Right.
activity.
Okay, I apologize.
So we stipulate that we would, yeah, we
Yes,
would,
we'll provide that.
we comply with that ordinance requirement.
As well as a silk fence.
Yes.
Thank you.
The item number 9, the contractor shall maintain good housekeeping measures at the time during the construction phase, bearing in mind that the site is located in a residential neighborhood. Tracking pads shall be constructed at all egress locations to prevent mud and so forth. And filter bags shall be installed on drainage inlet. And the answer is absolutely. We'll address that. We showed tracking pads at 2. In other words, our proposed site plans has 2 driveways, one off of Parsonage and one off of Old Sherrills Road. And both the driveways will have stabilized construction gravel as required by soil erosion sediment control.
Okay, so now, there's a new subject matter heading here on page 3, traffic and circulation, correct?
Correct.
So bearing in mind that there will also be kind of supplemental detailed traffic testimony, perhaps you could just kind of touch on,
Yes.
you know, from the engineering staff aspect, what you've done to address some of these comments and highlight them in the exhibits. To the
Correct. The first comment is the proximity of the ingress driveway at Parsonage Hill Road at the intersection. The concern was, if the board will recall, that in the prior site plan application, the main driveway was located roughly in this location, and it came in and tied into the site in that fashion. That driveway was 160 feet from the center line of the property to the driveway. As you can see, what we've done, we studied an alternative driveway into the site, and we pushed the driveway based on this exhibit, a total of 270 feet from the property line intersection. And I think that goes a long way to alleviate the concerns of both the board engineer and the traffic consultant had the same concerns, and we would propose to make that change. And that change basically does not impact on our parking count. So we were able to provide that driveway and still meet all the requirements of parking, setbacks, and so forth, and impervious coverage.
And that's consistent, because I was Ms. Callahan's specific recommendation, or at least question, inquiry was a driveway location further to the west along Parsonage Hill frontage considered. So that's what was implemented.
Yes.
I think the next one, too, questions about turning radii and wheel
Yes.
path.
So the turning rate, obviously, the turning radiuses of the presumed truck, in this case, the truck that governs the design is a fire truck, which we had provided at the last hearing. We had a turning radius on our drawing, and we've in both we've.
So hold on.
I think somebody's.
I apologize. I thought I muted.
Civic moment. While Mr. Bronte is actually adjusting, I actually wanted to just mention the context of the traffic report for the benefit of the public.
Sure, my pleasure, Madam Chair. As members of the public, you may have heard, but just to emphasize, this gentleman is a civil engineer. He's talking about some traffic issues and circulation issues from our board civil engineer's memo. However, the applicant also has told us that they will have a traffic engineer to get into more detail with respect to traffic study, parking, etc. So I want everybody to understand the context. I also want everybody to know, if you don't already, that the board, with the consent of the applicant, retained an independent traffic engineer for the board's benefit. Mr. Fishinger, who was appointed by the board, authorized to serve in that independent role for the board. He's here this evening, seated right in the front center there. And it's my understanding that there'll be not only the traffic study that was submitted by the traffic engineer for the applicant, but also Mr. Fishinger has recently submitted a report which will be available to everyone as well as there's a response forthcoming or coming this evening from the traffic engineer to Mr. Fishinger's report. So there will be in-depth addressing of the traffic and site circulation and beyond parking, but this is just from the civil engineering perspective for context. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warner.
Yeah, I
So you show, and just so on applicant's A1 is the exhibit where you show the relocated driveway, correct? That's
Correct.
described. All right, turning to item 2 then, and questions about the wheel path. Now, you mentioned the turning radius for a fire truck. Did you reach out to the Millburn Fire Department and get
Yes.
information from them as to the specific dimensions and size of the fire apparatus that they use here in town?
Yes, correct. Also, if I may, I took out, we have copies of all the exhibits that I can distribute to the board, if that's
Boy, that might be really helpful to these folks if you have
Correct.
those, yes. That, you'd be able to get, obviously you'd have a better view.
And these are A1 and
all four exhibits are being passed out.
So they're all stapled together in a set. The one on the top is then marked as applicant's A1. It's the one that's exhibit C1 with dated November 5th. And as we get to the other 3, we'll have to mark
identify,
those.
that's fine.
How many do you have? How many?
I think I have 12, if I'm not mistaken.
And maybe, with that being the case, maybe it makes sense to reorient this more this way.
Great, absolutely, yes, if we all have one in front of us, thank you.
And perhaps, Madam Chair, with your permission, some board members could share so our board professionals can get a couple, if they can follow along as well.
You have it.
I have a big copy.
So do we, where
Oh,
the
you're
board
good?
can keep the copies.
Okay.
You certainly don't have 12.
I have one extra one.
Yeah.
I don't think we've quite got 12.
No, that's still a exhibit.
Thanks.
Is Martha have one?
That's fine. Yeah.
Exhibit C3.
Not yet, we
Not
haven't.
yet.
I have extra ones if you don't have one. Mine is marked up though, unfortunately. Okay. Okay.
I have both, and Martha, I have both.
All right, so
Sorry for the interruption.
All right, so we're looking at various size trucks and their ability to access the site and make safe and efficient turning movements.
Correct.
So
Correct.
if you could show how that's depicted on your exhibits, John, that'd be great.
I will have to advance the drawings to the next exhibit. Bear with me for a second. While I'm here, C2 is our landscaping drawing,
Wait, just
but I'll have to advance one more to the traffic turn. And C3 provides.
Speak into the microphone, thanks.
Sorry, C3 provides the turning radiuses for the study trucks is the Millburn.
excuse me, John, just for a second. So
Sure.
before you get too far, so we're looking at exhibit C3 dated November 5th, 2024. It's called Traffic and Vehicle Circulation Plan. You can mark that for identifications applicants A2.
We mark it A3. He already mentioned the landscape plan is A2.
Yeah, that makes good sense.
I think we'll,
Eliminate confusion.
we don't want to cross our A's and our C's.
So that has been marked as applicant A3. So John, you're referring now to A3. Could you highlight
Correct.
those?
So A3 is, the base of the drawing is the site plan that's similar to C1 with the new driveway shown. And we superimposed the turning radius is that a fire truck entering the site off of a Parsonage Hill Road, coming into the site, then turning down the driveway, going down to the lower parking lot, then exiting on Old Short Hills Road. Whether we also looked at where the firehouses that serve Millburn are located. It appeared to us from the research that your main firehouse is obviously near the town hall here on Essex Street. So the shortest path for the fire department to respond would be from that firehouse. So we would surmise that they would travel Old Shore Hills Road, make a left onto Parsonage Hill, and a left onto the site. A waste truck, since it's private carting, could come from both directions, and you can see the waste truck that we've modeled. Also, while I'm on this drawing, there were comments regarding the placement of the waste storage unit, the storage area, and we've rotated it 90 degrees and sort of in the same location, so that the waste truck, and we've also that was discussed at the last hearing. We had the driveway coming down to the lower lot as a 12-foot wide driveway with a non-paved shoulder to provide additional turning radius for the trucks. And the board at the last hearing, and they had requested that needed to be paved as well. And we've done that so that now a waste truck can come down, access the waste area either as a front load, then obviously back up, and then exit the site. There was also, while I'm on this drawing, comments that we had received by the board professionals and also the traffic consultant for the board, that we had proposed a one-way connection from the driveway parking closer to the building, so that we would not have a dead end parking. That car coming there, making that right hand turn would have been able to make it, but what we've done, made it a two-way, so widened that whole turning so that the cars will have an easy time to make that turn. So we made that improvement that we wanted to propose. So
Do you have a passenger vehicle template on there?
yes, we have a typical car that's you can see there, the waste truck sizes, as well as the fire truck. And we have the fire truck specs that we received from the township. There was also a comment from the fire department to make sure that any of the outriggers that this truck has sufficient to be able to deploy the outriggers. And the outriggers are shown, even though you can't read it, to be 16 to 18 feet total width. And all our driveways will provide that width so that they can deploy the outriggers and without having any impact from any parked cars there. So this exhibit basically addresses the entering and exiting of a fire truck. This is the largest fire truck that Millburn has, waste trucks, and cars. You can see that they also asked that we would look at delivery trucks and school buses. This school that we're proposing will not have any school buses. All the students will be driven by their parents to the site. So school buses is not contemplated. As far as delivery trucks, it's a relatively small school, so we anticipate a mail truck, an Amazon delivery truck, which are much smaller than let's say the waste truck and the fire truck. So those trucks, we did not show them because by inspection, we deduced that those trucks, delivery trucks can enter the site relatively easy.
All right, that was a mouthful about turning radius. Item 3, the existing sidewalk along Old Short Hills Road should be improved to a concrete sidewalk to ensure ADA compliance. Have we agreed to do that?
Yes, and
Is that shown on the exhibit?
yeah, it's shown on C1. I can turn back for the board if that.
If that's
It's shown. It's shaded in gray, so you can see what we're proposing, and that sidewalk will be designed in accordance with the county specs, since we are on the county road.
We're on to item 4 now, John, the curb ramp.
Yeah, the curb ramp on intersection of Park Road and Old Short Hills Road is proposed to be replaced. It's recommended that rectangular rapid flashing beacon sign should be placed there, and we agreed to do that. That's just for the board. Just to refresh the board, Parker has sidewalks, and that's really there's only one crosswalk that brings the public to be able to cross Old Short Hills Road, and it's located there. And with the new sidewalk, will be extended to the end of our property line, and that condition will be improved to be ADA compliant.
Item 5, I think, is one of those instances where it's just a statement of fact. The size of the parking space is shown on the plan scale to 9 by 19, and the aisle width is 23 feet, both of which meet requirements of section 516.5 of the ordinance. That your understanding as well?
Yes.
And item 6, the number of EV make-ready parking spaces exceeds the minimum required by ordinance by including the credit that's allowed for providing the EV parking spaces. The applicant has complied with the minimum parking space requirement. That's your understanding as well?
That's correct.
Page 4, new subject matter topic, stormwater management.
Correct.
If you could go through.
The stormwater management, the board engineer provided roughly six total comments, and I can go through one by one, but in essence, to summarize, the board engineers agreed with our stormwater management design. I don't think there are any issues that were raised as far as the design. So, I mean, if the board would like, I can go through them.
And certainly she'll have the opportunity to express whether or not, she's got any quibbles or any disagreement with that.
Correct.
No, I thought it was.
Thank you. The next topic is on page 5.
If I may, for a moment though, on the last one, the stormwater management plan, I think it requires a stipulation that you'll comply with the obligations stated therein.
Correct.
As far as follow-up maintenance submitted to the township engineer, annual basis, et cetera.
Yeah.
In item 6,
I don't want to
yes.
assume you're stipulating.
No, thank you very much. I'm glad. Yeah,
Well,
but you're correct, and that's a document that would typically required to be recorded.
And that was submitted.
And you will record it in the.
Yes.
Yes.
Clerk's office, county clerk's office as well.
Yes, stipulated as such, yes.
Okay, on and manual. Thank you.
The next topic on page 5 has to do with lighting. The lighting plan, number 1, lighting plan parameters reported shows a slight but acceptable luminance exceedings and average full candles in 4 locations. All the other parameters, minimum, average, average to minimum ratio, maximum to minimum ratio, meet the design criteria. So
To back up on that one just a minute. So she identified 4 locations on the site where there's an exceedance of light levels. So could you specify exactly where those are on the site and the reason for the proposed levels of light?
yeah, I don't have the exhibit to show that, but in essence, they're located internally to the site and not at the perimeter to the neighbors.
And what would be the reason for those exceedances?
Well, a lot of times with traffic, foot candles, whenever you're close to a fixture, the levels tend to be higher at the base of the poles, and but the idea for lighting design is that you look for the average for the entire site. That's why the average, the maximum average to minimum ratios, maximum to minimum ratio, those parameters that allow for that, to compensate for that localized hotspot, if you will.
Madam Chair, if I may ask a relevant question to some of our professionals. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they comply with all the site design requirements with respect to lighting. These 4 locations where there's an exceedance, the average still is compliant. So there is no deviation from an ordinance provision, either by way of requiring a variance or a site plan design waiver, correct?
Well, I don't think it rises to that level. It's de minimis exceedance, and if anything, it wouldn't be a variance, it would be a waiver.
Right, if anything, I was just asking for confirmation, if it's correct, that there is no waiver required for the board to determine, given the fact that there's compliance with all the other design criteria.
Yeah.
I don't know, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
To add to that, if I may, if you recall at the last hearing, the board asked that the light poles be a total 12 feet in height. What we were showing is the pole height to be 12 plus the fixture. We've agreed to lower so that the maximum height to the fixture, to the top of the fixture, is 12 feet. So that may alleviate those that concern with the hotspots, because we're lowering the light pole. But more importantly, item number 2, the board engineer indicated that there is no off-site spillage of lighting to the neighbors around the perimeter, which is the more stringent sort of design requirements that we're typically held to. And number 3, we're being asked that the wall-mounted fixture specified shall be shielded to conform to dark sky recommendations. And applicant should provide testimony as to the conformance with pole-mounted fixtures to the recommended dark sky. All the fixtures that we have proposed will be shielded and are complying with dark sky.
Both wall and.
Correct. All the fixtures.
And if I may, Madam Chair, if I recall correctly, there are 2 levels of dark sky lighting compliance. Is that correct, Mr. Ferrante? If you know.
No, normally I think the requirements that you want to keep your light fixtures to 3,000 Kelvin and be dark sky compliant. And also, a lot of times you can add, if shielding is required, that can be added additionally. But I personally am not aware that there's 3 levels of dark sky.
I don't know if our board planner.
Yeah, there's half cutoffs or full cutoff fixtures. So full cutoff would be where the shade comes down to shield any source of the light from visibility.
Are we agreeing to full cutoff?
Yes.
Okay. And then I still thought that there's a certain there's levels of certification for dark sky compliance for lighting. But maybe that's something that
We can look into that and.
look into. And again, just so we're clear as to what's being stipulated to.
Right. So in the past, my experience is that the fixtures are specified to be dark sky compliant, and ours will do that. We will check in if there's an additional levels of dark sky but I can't testify to that.
If you make that determination, if you let us know if you need a higher level as well. Or not.
Absolutely. Item number 4, as far as lighting, applicant testified as to whether the proposed site signage located at the northwest corner at the intersection of Parsonage and Old Short Hills Road will be illuminated, and the answer is will not be illuminated. The next topic is landscaping, and item number 1, it's more of a statement, and the answer is yes. It has to do with recognition, as we discussed at last hearing. There are 2 very small steep slope areas on the site which we're not disturbing, and the area should be adequately landscaped, especially as we discussed just to remind the board, the basin, the stormwater basin has a 3-to-1 berm on the south side, as shown here. And the landscaping drawing that I will present in a few minutes, you recall at the last hearing, has very dense landscaping to protect the steep slope on that 3-to-1 slope of the berm for the basin.
So you'll stipulate to the adequate landscaping to ensure the stabilization of the berm?
Correct.
So you'll be subject to review and approval of our engineer. I would imagine.
Correct, absolutely. Item number 2 refers to just a recognition that we had received comments from the Township Forester, a memo dated October 9, 2024. And all the comments are related to tree removal, replacement, as well as landscape species stated in the Forester's memo. We had at the last hearing stipulated that we agreed to comply with all the comments from the Forester.
Forester memo of September 13th.
It says October 9th. I have a September 13th. Maybe there was a subsequent.
It was, I think that was a typo.
When was the typo?
In my report, I referred to the October 9th.
Oh, you had a typo. Okay, so
Yeah.
you repeated the typo. Got it.
Yeah,
I was
I'm
writing
looking,
it down.
Mr. Warner, you have September 13th?
Okay,
Yes.
the same memo that you're referencing.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
And I believe you stipulated to compliance with the entirety of it at the last hearing,
Correct.
according to my notes.
We did, correct.
Yes. The next topic is a general topic.
Actually, I just want to, I want to clarify just to make sure there's no misunderstanding. I'm looking now at that September 13th Forester's memo with replacement trees. You'll recall that based on the number of trees that are being removed, the ordinance has a replacement requirement.
Ratio.
And what we're proposing is under that total number, but as the planner's report notes, if for some reason that number is not met, there's an alternative means of complying by way of making a contribution to the tree fund. And what we had talked about, and what we're stipulating to and more than happy to do, is we have no issue with complying with that requirement if we can and it makes sense, meaning there's enough room, given the existing and mature tree growth and everything else that we're proposing, that if we meet that full number, they'll thrive, they'll survive. They're not just going to get choked out by the canopy of what surrounds them. So we will work with the forester to see if we can do that and come as close as we can. And if we can't for those reasons, then we would use the fallback that's available under the ordinance and make the required contribution in lieu.
Right, the in lieu contribution would be for the deficiency that
Correct.
remains, if any, after all reasonable efforts to meet the requirement.
That's
Correct.
And everything else, items 2 through 6 were straightforward. Yes, we'll comply, no problem.
Under general, the last 3 items, item number 1 and number 2 is more administrative items that are typical. That just a reminder that we have to, at the start of construction, post a performance bond for 120% of the engineer's construction estimate, as well as post an escrow fee to pay the services of third-party inspectors. And that's standard, and we're agreeing to that, stipulate. And number 3, it's a reiteration that the sanitary system study would have to be taking place, and we had discussed that. The answer is yes.
Thank you, John. I think you have 2 other exhibits, though, that you
Correct.
prepared,
And
Let's-
also, the other comment, while I have this exhibit, so I don't have to go back and forth,
And
they
the
were
exhibit you're referring to now is
It's C3.
A3, applicants A3.
A3, drawing a number exhibit C3. And there were comments from the traffic consultant regarding providing side triangles for both driveways, as well as side triangles for the public making a right-hand turn from Parsonage Hill Road onto Old Shore Hills Road, as well as we were asked to do a side triangle for traffic going north. So we provided that, except that we did not have the survey for past Parsonage Hill Road to the north, but we provided a street view from Google, as well as Google Earth images to show that there is sufficient side triangles. So in essence, all the side triangles that were being asked for are shown here, and and we meet the requirements. That is it for the engineer's report, but I can show the other two exhibits.
Please.
One is the revised landscaping plan. And what you see here is the landscaping plan that we have presented.
John, I'm gonna have to interrupt you again, I'm sorry.
No problem.
So can you just take a quick look, what you're showing on the smart board, that's the same one that I've got shown here, a hard copy?
Correct.
So this is titled Landscaping and Tree Replacement Plan. It's Exhibit C2 dated November 5th, 2024. I'd like to mark identification as applicants A2. Please.
Okay.
Yes, thanks.
So for the board and the public, this is the similar to the landscaping plan that was presented at the last hearing. The only changes that we've made was to reflect what we're proposing as the new driveway location, as well as the paving of the driveway from the upper lot to the lower lot. But essentially, the stormwater basins, the bio basin are the same. And we've attempted to add additional trees. There was a lot of comments from the neighbors regarding being able to see the project from the neighbors from all directions. And what we had testified that the site has a lot of existing vegetation that we're maintaining along Short Hills Road, Parsonage, our neighbors to the west, and as you can see partially to the south, as well as against the stormwater basin. So, but what we did was, also to address some of the comments, was that the prior version of the landscaping plan did not show all the trees that are remaining with their canopies. And again, what we testified to was that because there are so many trees that exist on the site that we're maintaining, that adding the shortfall of trees that we have to replace for the township ordinance, it becomes difficult because they just will not survive with all that canopy that's already there. So this exhibit shows all the existing trees in a light gray with their canopy that we try to we measured from our site visit, and so we sprinkled new trees that you can see there, new trees, new species, new shrubs, so that the site has a large amount of landscaping. And again, just to address the comments that we have received, there's a total of 124 trees on the site. We are cutting six.
You mean like today, as we stand here right now?
Based on our survey visiting the site.
Okay.
And it's not, I think, I'm not aware of any cutting that has gone on since the survey was on site. Surveyor, we are cutting 64 trees, and according to the requirement for replacement of trees by the township, we are required to replace 208 trees to replace. This plan indicates that we're only able to add 138 new trees, so we have a shortfall of 70 trees, which we are proposing to donate to the tree fund.
And again, as I had stated, if and when the time comes, we'll roll up our sleeves and sharpen pencils and work with the forester to see if that can be pushed up closer to the requirement. And if we meet it and everyone's comfortable that those trees can thrive, then fantastic. And if not, only at that point would any deficiency we would propose to address by the contribution.
Thanks. Can I ask a clarifying question on that? I drive by the site regularly, and you mentioned the last time your surveyor was there. I see the plan. I know is dated yesterday. No, yeah, the 5th. So I know at the site it appears there are shrubs or some variety of small trees around the perimeter, but, you shared this plan and it doesn't look like it matches what I have in my mind, so I'm just.
No, it's a good comment. The drawing is dated November 5th, but the survey was there not yesterday. It was-
Right.
A week
But
or
in
so
terms
ago.
of the numbers, I'm
No,
not following.
right, so we are showing and locating trees. A lot of the shrubbery, anything typically that's lower than a 6-inch diameter DBH, those are considered minor trees, and we don't show all those.
Thank you. To your follow-up question?
Yeah, could I also on that, so the canopies and everything are listed on here. What is on the underside of all these canopies? These are very large trees where you can see if you're, in a car or standing, so what is proposed to be shielding?
Correct. That's a great question, and we do not show the shrubbery that exists. In fact, I'm aware from my visit to the site that it's relatively dense along Short Hills Road, and but a lot of that denseness is made up by minor trees and shrubbery, which we don't plot on the drawing.
That's gonna remain though? Once it's-
Yes, as you can see, by the gray outline of existing trees, all of that, and also I don't have the site plan. If you look at our area of disturbance, all that area along Short Hills Road, other than where the utilities are coming in and the driveway, are not being touched, as well as along Parsonage Hill Road. Now that we've relocated the driveway, all of that area right here is staying pretty much natural.
And if you could, just so you're now referring to applicants A2, and you said, so could you just, with reference to directions,
Correct.
raise
So
your finger again? To
the
show
south
us-
side of Parsonage Hill Road, heading east to the intersection, then heading south along the west side of Old Short Hills Road. A lot of that vegetation is staying, and similarly, as you can see on the west side, because we have residential neighbors to the west and to the south. So a lot of that existing canopy and trees are remaining. But in the interior of the site is where the trees are being cut.
And you were describing the southern edge of Parsonage Hill Road. So basically everything east of the new driveway cut that we're proposing, up to the intersection, and then heading south on the west side of Old Short Hills Road. I guess there are only two interruptions, right? The underground utility runs from the existing utilities in the right of way.
Correct.
And then the
driveway.
and that driveway, is that an existing driveway location?
Well, there was an existing driveway, but not at that exact location.
And other than that, everything else that's not impacted by those things remains.
Correct. So you can see it's a very dense landscaping for the site, which is obviously alleviates the concern that the public had raised.
And I can also tell, for the benefit of the members of the board and any members of the public who live nearby, that when the time comes for our architect to testify, he's prepared an exhibit that, shows in a more three-dimensional way the existing trees that will remain, and gives you a better sense, as opposed to a plan view, of what some of the views would be from off-site and
We'll
with
have
the
like a
preserved trees.
rendering or
Yeah,
plan.
precisely, in elevation view, yes.
Thank you.
Question, so what percentage of the trees being removed would you say are mature trees?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
What percentage of the trees being removed are mature trees?
Well, it actually, we have shown that on our drawings. We provided if I may, I will now move to our exhibit C4 or A4 to be marked.
John, just give me a quick look. Is this I got the right one up here?
Yes.
All right, then, the plan is titled Existing Conditions and Demolition Plan, Exhibit C4, that's dated 11/5/2024. I'd like to mark for identification as applicant's A4 with today's date. John.
Okay, this exhibit C4 or A4 is the existing condition site plan that locates all the trees. And one of the comments that we had received the last time was that we had not identified all the trees. We basically were only showing the trees that are remaining and being removed. So this exhibit shows with these three tables shows all the trees on the site. As I indicated, we have 124 total trees, as you can see here, and 64 trees are being cut. So what we did to make it easier for everyone to follow, that this initial table on the right-hand side of drawing C4 lists all the trees that we're cutting, all 64. And if I'll zoom in to answer the board member's question regarding sizing, I will zoom in because my eyesight will not allow me to read that table.
Council, will Mr. Ferrante also be speaking to the Environmental Commission's memorandum, some of which is touches on some of the items that he is addressing?
Yeah, just briefly, I don't know, there are some recommendations in there. I may be able to address them. I don't know that they require additional testimony. I think they're requests for complying with certain things, but we'll certainly address it, yes.
Thank you.
My laptop's not cooperating. It's locked up. So if I may, I'll go the old-fashioned way, go to refer to the drawings. So in essence, it's a variety of trees. You can see of the 64 trees that are being cut, they average from, let's say on the low end, 7.6 dBH. That's diameter at breast height to just scanning down, there is a 44.5 inch white ash. There's a lot of 14 inch, 26 inch pines, a lot of arborvitaes at 11 inches, 10 inches, 14 inches. Norway, there's several Norway spruce that average 10 inch diameter, a 30 inch sugar maple, 35 inch white pine, and again, 23 Norway maple and a 22 inch crab apple. But they're all listed there. And again, the trees that we're cutting, as this drawing indicates, are at the middle of the property where the building is located, at the center of the property, as well as where the parking lot is. But so you can see also from this drawing that all the perimeter trees are on the perimeter of the parking lot, obviously on the south side near the basin, they're being cut. But we tried hard to maintain as much of the canopy around in this case, 3 sides plus this southeast side of the property with the existing trees. The only thing we had to, because of the berm for the drainage basin, we had to cut the trees down on the south side of the property. I don't know if that answers your question, ma'am.
Not sure if I did.
Allison, you want to-
For our board.
I just have a question. As I'm looking at the prints that we received, there's a list of tree removal counts, and it ranges anywhere from 10 to 42 inch trees that will be removed. And now you're saying we're jumping to this list, so these are now going to remain?
So say again?
On figure 6, revision C.
Okay.
From the prints that we originally received.
Correct.
You had a list of tree removal count.
Correct.
Of 217 trees. And they listed anywhere from 10 inches to 42 inches.
Correct. And that's the list I was referring to, the 64 trees on that table on C4.
So they're the exact same, is that
Yes, we've managed to maintain the same number of trees that we're cutting, yes. Then we also provided a table that based on the ratios that the township requires as far as diameter of trees. There's a ratio that depending on the diameter, how many trees get replaced. So based on that ratio, we've calculated that 208 trees will have to be, are required to be replanted. However, based on the density, we're only able to locate 138 trees to replace. So we have a shortfall of 70 trees.
Another question. So, I know in parts of Short Hills, there are trees that have been designated as historic. None of these trees have been designated as historic on this property?
I'm not aware of that, but we can check that.
Yeah, in accordance with the EIS, it said that there were no
Correct.
historic trees identified on the site.
And also when we get to it, the Melbourne Environmental Commission report dated November 4th, 2024, also it does not indicate the presence of any historic
Correct.
trees, which would be consistent with our EIS. And they did conduct, it does also note in here that they did conduct a site visit on September. I'll find it, but they do acknowledge that they did a site visit.
Correct.
September 19th, 2024.
In essence, that sort of concludes my presentation of the exhibits and
I think
review.
Steve had one question.
If I could
Sorry.
just ask since you're on the subject of the trees, and I assume you're going to address the environmental commission report as well. So, since it relates to, obviously.
Yes,
landscaping Trees as well as other items that I assume would be pertain to the civil engineering
Yes.
area of expertise. But while you're talking about the trees, the replacement trees, I don't believe I heard anything as far as tree heights at installation. Did I miss that?
No, I think we've proposed it's the sort of the standard caliper, 2.5 inch for the replacement trees.
Right, but the height of the trees at planting.
The planted height, yes. Normally, a 2.5 inch caliper for the trees we're proposing, they're at 10 feet on average. So some boards prefer a little taller trees so that the canopy can be replaced quicker.
If there's is there a standard planting detail in the ordinance with regard to?
I'm not sure, you would have to ask the forester, I don't know what she's.
Yes.
Okay.
We can check that.
Just so I understand, so you're removing some trees that are 44 inches in diameter, 32 inches in diameter?
I
with
think
2-inch
there's a couple, yes.
With 2-inch diameter trees?
Well, the town ordinance gives you the ratio to replace specifically for that reason.
So when you say the ratio, so the larger the tree that you
The more
remove,
replacement, yes,
the more replacement trees.
correct.
It doesn't require larger replacement trees, it requires more of the standard height replacement trees, is that correct?
Correct.
So can I ask a question? If we have an issue.
Talk a little louder, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. If we have an issue in terms of not being able to put as many trees as are required possibly on the property, would it be possible to increase the diameter of some of the trees instead so that they are larger in diameter rather than having, such a large number of replacement trees that they wouldn't survive on the property?
And I can answer on behalf of the applicant, we would want to be consistent with any planting detail that the ordinance requires. In other words, if you were to try to install a 50-foot tall tree that's 10 inches in diameter, that would be exorbitantly expensive and it would require large equipment to get on site. That's not something I think the applicant would countenance.
Question?
Yeah, so have any calculations been done as
Just
to-
speak up. I think folks can. You're
Is that
being
better?
picked up on the. You're being picked up on the YouTube, but not in the audio. Like they can't hear you louder. These are not amplifying.
Oh, okay. So my question is, there's some very large trees that you guys are taking down. They absorb a certain amount of stormwater. Has there been any calculations done to see what impact that's going to have to get rid of those mature trees and plant these little, mean, 2 inches, that's sort of like a twig.
Right.
It's not going to absorb nearly as much water. Have there been any calculations done?
No, not specifically regarding that, the sort of groundwater uptake by the large trees. But again, just to remind everyone that based on the DEP BMP manual, we are required to design the amount of stormwater that's flowing out of the site for the 2, 10, and 100-year storm has to be, for example, for the 100-year storm has to be has to be lower than the pre-existing condition. We are capturing based on the location of the basins, as well as our stormwater management design from the parking lot, the roof, and everything else from the site. Whereas now, most of the sheet flow from the property, as I indicated the last meeting, flows from the high point on Parsonage Hill, and it flows directly south towards the neighboring property. And right now, pretty much all the stormwater that's flowing on this property sheet flows out of the property to the south. We are capturing pretty much all of that, with the exception of a few drainage areas that we are not touching, such as the area to the west that goes to the existing stream that daylights on the property. Some of the flow, let's say, very minor flows from along the east side on Old Shore Hills Road. But so in essence, we are capturing and infiltrating stormwater through our the bio basin that we're provided. So because of that, we meet all the DEP standards. And also to refresh the board, and I'm sure the board engineer will, based on the new stormwater rules that were enacted, I think last year, we are required to design for the 2,100 rainstorm. So all those factors, so the factor of safety in the stormwater design is pretty sizable, and we meet and we designed for that. But the answer to your question, that was a long-winded answer to say no, we didn't do those calculations. But to do those calculations, we require a lot of soil data at the tree location, and but we are not, at least
also aren't required.
Not required.
Madam Chair, now that we brought up the basins, it's my understanding that they're not typically put into existing residential neighborhoods. Was anything else considered?
Well, as far as the basin, other things that are considered, in essence, New Jersey DEP prefers as a technology to infiltrate as much of the water as possible. So we are required to infiltrate the water quality storm, which is typically the 2-year storm, which we've done that. Urban areas, we're also exempt from infiltrating the other storms that if we were outside of an urban area, we would have to infiltrate. So,
John, let me ask you, if you were designing a residential development here,
correct.
would it be uncommon to have a stormwater basin similar to the one that you're proposing here?
Actually, stormwater basins, what we see here is when you look at the hierarchy of what DEP prefers, is one of the preferred methodologies.
Even in a residential?
Even in a residential
So
area.
is the notion that stormwater basins similar to this one are not typically installed or implemented in residential areas, is that simply inaccurate?
It really, the answer is yes, but it's qualified yes. It depends on the size of the property and the size of the disturbance. Typical residential properties that we do and township prefer the dry wells, sort of collecting the roof water to dry wells, the driveway coming in and out of the site in dry wells. But for something of this magnitude, as far as the size of the parking, upper and lower, dry wells then tend not to be very practical. Plus, DEP only allows dry wells, according to the BMPs, only for the 2-year storm, not for the 100-year storm.
The benefit of the public BMPs is best management practices.
Correct.
Can I just add that the DEP requires for a major development, which is 1 acre or more of disturbance, or a quarter of an acre of new impervious coverage. They require the stormwater basin and bioretention green infrastructure type device for regulated motor vehicle service, which is what parking lots are. So they've conformed with that. And I also want to point out, I don't know if you were on the board, but when we did Cora Way, that subdivision, there is a stormwater basin on that site because it did exceed the greater than 1 acre of disturbance and quarter acre of community. So it was a subdivision with 2 houses and an additional street. So they were required to do that retention basin. So it's unusual in a town that's fully developed like we are, where many times you're just adding, putting an addition on an existing house wouldn't require a stormwater retention basin, but something of the size, it would.
So that brings me to the next question. The driveway change and some of the changes that were made, are the calculations still remaining the same as
Correct.
impervious coverage?
Yes, a great question. Actually, the proposed driveway change actually reduces impervious area and reduces the disturbance to the site because it's a much more direct route and the elevations are more favorable. We don't need a lot of earthwork to create the driveway that we had before.
So what is the calculation? Do you have that?
I do, but it does, this again, it's the exhibit. We're trying to get the board to accept what we're proposing as a potential change. We would have to then go back and modify the stormwater management to reflect what I'm presenting as far as the exhibit. So we have not been so presumptive to say that the board was going to accept what we're proposing.
We've made an effort to conceptually show you what we think we can do, being responsive to the
table.
correct. And we
Okay.
understand that ultimately revised plans would have to be submitted that confirm.
And new calculations.
Need for variances, we still comply with,
Right, so you would still be able to provide that.
we'll have no choice.
Yes, we have to.
And if I may, and if it results, in your opinion, to the ability to reduce the magnitude of the stormwater management, would you still be able to nevertheless maintain the same level of stormwater management, detention, et cetera,
Right.
retention that's already proposed, even if it's a lower impervious coverage or perhaps a lower requirement?
We would attempt to do that. So it's a balance in the design, if you will. We have certain mandates that we have to design to, such as reducing the post-development flow from the site to less than 80% of the pre-development for the 100-year storm. We could design right to the 79.9%, but in our case, we were a little bit more conservative and we didn't design right to the number.
If there's no reason why you can't maintain what might be an oversized system, and certainly our engineer could speak to that if it's even feasible, I guess, but would you be willing to keep that more conservative, oversized system?
I don't think the applicant's prepared to stipulate to that at this point. I think if what we're proposing requires less by way of stormwater management, I don't think at this point the applicant's prepared to stipulate that they would essentially over-engineer and over-design it to create a wider margin of safety over and above the margin of safety that's required by the regs.
Correct.
So we're not prepared to stipulate to that at this point. Once we actually have to submit the revised plans, if we're talking about a minor change or a minor amount of construction cost, a minor amount of construction delay, we would consider it, but we're not prepared to stipulate to that at this point.
We'll cross that detention basin when we get there.
Do you have other questions?
Yeah, again, so back to my original question. Is there any way, or was there a thought of integrating more into the landscape and the neighborhood and decrease having these basins available? Because that's my question. Was it even considered?
Right, if I understand correct, the question correctly, it's what other measures we can do to reduce the size of the basins, if I sort of captured your question.
Yes.
So there are other things we can do. For example, we can consider porous pavement that will help reduce the amount of flow that goes to the basin. We would do more infiltration vis-a-vis the porous pavement with this, with sand filters. So there's a lot of technologies, and we'd be glad to work with the engineer because from what I'm hearing, you would like to reduce the size of the basin ultimately.
Well, I think what I'd like to, even though it's the preferred practice, to do so.
Sorry, we just need to maintain the folks on the mic. to be-
So I think the answer to the question is, we're proposing basins, we're showing our plans on the basins, your engineers reviewed basins, your engineers confirmed we comply with the applicable regs with basins, so that's what we have before the board.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Deborah had a
Yeah,
question.
I had a couple.
First of all, can I
Oh,
just
sorry,
clarify? It is required by the DEP that a basin be used. They can't
It's-
use
it's
underground storage.
Not necessarily a basin, there's a list of different things, like John mentioned, a sand filter, but you have to make sure that you're able to get the number or the quantity of the volume that you're required to get. And some of these smaller type devices won't do that. Now, he
Right.
does have a combination, he's got the bioretention basin as well as the stormwater basin, so he's meeting the DEP regulations as required, so I couldn't see at this point to disagree with it because he's meeting all the requirements.
And so like the Woodland Hill or Woodland Road development, is that a comparable size as far as impermeable surface that they need to handle where they're doing
That's,
underground?
it's different because that site was entirely developed and they're actually decreasing significantly the amount of detention that's required. And in fact, they didn't, at the time that they submitted, these regulations were not in place, the new regs from 2023. So they were meeting the requirements when they first submitted in 2020. For the channel 2020.
Yes.
So they didn't have those regulations in place and they weren't required to provide the detention basin. So, but they did, I asked them to put in a bank of dry wells. They didn't have to do that. But I asked them to do it just to slow down the flow of water into the Arboretum channel. And they agreed to do that. So I think that will help quite a bit. But they met all the requirements of the town.
And just one question also on the infiltration. The basins be emptied in 72 hours.
Correct.
So what percentage are we talking about that's actually going back into the ground?
Well, the biobasin, it's all being infiltrated, and it has to be, as you correctly indicate, the requirements are that it has to be emptied within 72 hours. Based on our calculation, both the basins will be less than 32 hours.
Okay, but that means it's just going into the stormwater system, not going into.
No, the biobasin it's all infiltrated.
Right.
There is an overflow because all the flow is directed there, because part of the biobasin's function is to remove DEP requires removal of suspended solids from the parking lot, 80%. So that it's a technology, it allows for that to be filtered out of the water. It's a requirement. So it gets infiltrated, and then anything that is higher than a typical 2-year storm will then flow to the other basin, to the detention basin. And that basin also will have some infiltration, but the primarily function, though it's a detention basin, will store the water and release it slowly.
And the soils that these basins are being built out of is not typical to the soil on the site that has very or low infiltration rates, correct?
Correct. And that study has to happen. One of the things that in the next phase, when we go into detailed engineering, we would get all the soil data required to validate the infiltration rates. We also have to make sure that the bottom of the basin is not within 2 feet of a groundwater, because then you'll get mounding and then they don't function properly. So all that has to be done, and with the engineers review all that calculation.
So, you have a follow-up question on that item? Because Deborah had questions before, but. Well, if it's pertinent to that discussion, I want to let you finish up the
Yeah,
discussion.
yeah, so my question is, from an engineering perspective, if you had permeable surface for the parking lot, wouldn't that more quickly disperse the water into the ground? Whereas with the basin, it seems like what's happening is you're concentrating all the water into a specific area.
Correct.
Wouldn't that also cause more risk of an overflow?
It's a sort of a difficult question to answer, but the premise of your question is correct. Let's assuming we had a permeable surface on the parking lot, all the rainwater would fall on the parking lot and infiltrate. Unfortunately, DEP in their wisdom, even if, let's say, if we use a porous pavement, we're not allowed to lower the C value. C value is the coefficient of that is representative of the site condition. In other words, a grassy lawn has a coefficient of C of about 0.3, 0.4, parking lot 0.95. So based on the requirements for DEP, even though we would use a porous pavement and we have a soil that can infiltrate, we still have to treat the parking lot with a C value of 0.95. In other words, it's almost 100% impervious. So all those, that adds the volume that it doesn't lower the volume that we have to handle, in other words.
But it would reduce the risk of overflow.
Well, the risk of overflow from the basin, is that sort of the question? Yeah, the basin is designed for the 100-year storm. It has to retain all the water coming from the site, has to retain that, and it has to slowly let that water out. But we have 72 hours to empty the basin. So all the stormwater flow that we're designing to is not, sorry, is the 100-year storm for the 2100-year storm. So all those ratios. So the basin is designed properly for the DEP requirements.
Ms. Callahan had referred to some good housekeeping stuff, and I was just wondering, how often will debris be removed from the site as it's accumulating?
As far as maintenance of the basin?
No.
She's
I need the answer.
she's just talking about the comment in the board engineer's memo about good housekeeping practices during construction, and it's just, keep the site free of debris and refuse. So in terms of good construction practices,
Absolutely.
how often does that happen?
Well, the soil erosion and sediment control plan has very specific requirements as far as maintaining the silt fence around the site. Has to be inspected regularly, and because obviously if you get a lot of sediments during construction, the sediment fabric can get clogged. That has to be replaced. As far as the good housekeeping, is the contractor is responsible for maintaining that. As far as but that can be stipulated, and we know that the board engineer and their inspectors will visit the site regularly. I'm sorry.
Madam Chair, could we
Yeah,
just
we-
have some
we
decorum,
only-
people shouting stuff out from the bench?
Thank you, correct. Only the person who's testifying can provide testimony this morning.
Correct.
Okay. So that can, there will be oversight from.
Inspection.
Yes.
Okay, my other question, I think it came up in one of the reports, is what are you proposing for access for the maintenance plan of the basins? How is there going to be access to maintain those?
Yes, that was one of the comments, and
You can show that on the exhibit.
yeah, it'll be faster.
Can you just say into the microphone the question for everybody's?
Yes, the question was, how will access to the basin be provided?
For maintenance.
For maintenance purposes, obviously. And we also want to indicate that as part of the stormwater management, a maintenance and inspection plan has to be submitted, which we submitted. So the way we graded the site, as you can see,
I'm sorry, you're referring to A1, is that right?
Exhibit C1.
Applicant's A1.
Right. I'm sorry, the board may not see this, but we provided sufficient access so that the top of the berms, the entrance to the basins is from a gate adjacent to the waste area. And so we provided a gate so that typical landscaping trucks and equipment to cut the grass, to maintain the shrubbery is provided there with a sufficient amount of width
And
so
the
that,
slope permits that? Yeah?
yes.
Thank you.
And last question, in terms of the location of the play area, how, I think you said it, I didn't quite hear you. How close to the neighboring properties is that going to be, and how well screened is that going to be?
Yeah, the playground, which is located on the south side of the upper lot, you can see here, I apologize, you can't see my finger, but it to the nearest neighbor to the west, just looking at the scale, it's over 50 feet. In other words, we have a 25 feet residential buffer, and we have the side yard setback, so we're about 10 feet past the 40-foot side, so 50 feet is what I estimate
And that
visually.
plan also shows an existing 6-foot fence in that location, correct?
Correct.
And if I may, that 50 feet is to the residential property line, not to a dwelling, correct?
The dwelling is even greater, right, to the property line.
And the landscaping plan, does that also show proposed landscaping, further buffering that play area?
Correct. You can see on like my exhibit C2, we provided shrubbery around the western and southern edge of the park, of the playground.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
So I have a question about the lighting plan. You had indicated that you were accommodating our previous concerns and lowering, so the maximum height of the light is
Correct.
12 feet. And you sort of told us that should help reduce some of the minor inconsequential overage. I'm just, for our township engineer, can you, since I am not an expert in lighting, is that presumption reasonable, or is that something we can rely on, that if you lower, in my mind, if you lower a light, it arguably makes it more intense on the ground?
Sorry.
I'm thinking that the increased levels that we're getting is because there's overspill and overlap from other sources. So the higher it goes, the more overlap.
Correct.
If you lower it, it'll be more concentrated and it may not exceed that maximum.
Right, but your premise is also correct. So if I have a flashlight that I'm shining directly down, the intensity is higher than away from the light.
Thanks, John.
It's a smaller diameter, of course. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Other questions?
Madam Chair, I'd like to finish my questioning just
I
about the
apologize
basin.
if I
No, that's
interrupted.
okay. It was more an interruption of not being able to finish. So again, I'd like to go to the basins. You said that you were responsible for the DEP report. Is that every year, every 5 years? What is that?
It's a schedule that we stipulate in the management plan, and different technologies require different schedules. For this type of basin, we typically recommend quarterly visual inspections, and then as needed, if debris, there should be little or no debris entering the basin, but in essence, that would have to be looked at, as well as to make sure that the outlet control structure doesn't get clogged with leaves. That would have to be maintained.
And John, do those inspections involve checklists that are part of
Correct.
of the plan? And does that require reporting to the municipality?
Yes.
And that annually?
Yes.
And Ms. McCall, you reviewed the maintenance plan. Did that meet with your approval?
And the bio retention, is that filtered? So the filters have to be changed?
Yes, the typical design is, you can see from the landscaping drawing, the biofilter has shrubbery inside, which help with the water uptake as far as that's concerned. And it does have a sand filter, and there's a inspection ports for there's an under drain system that will collect the water. And those under drains can be inspected with there's clean outs that you can inspect and maintain the drainage layer underneath the biobasin in that function, yes.
And I think this question is more for Martha. And Martha, are there fines for not upkeeping any of these particular basins?
As far as I know, there is no established fine that would have to be written into the ordinance, and
Sorry.
if there is a fine for that. But we do have the requirement, I require them every year, because I provide a report every year to the DEP, due May 1st every year. And I have to stipulate in the report that all of these detention basins that we have in town have done their inspections and have provided those to me, so I have them available to get to the DEP if they have.
Okay, and in your professional opinion, due to the lot coverage, is driving then the basins to be installed, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Ferrante?
So I think
There's some behind you,
oh,
sorry, no, just from our
well,
board,
that's-
from Graham.
oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
from our board planner, and, yeah, go ahead. Would you mind coming up to the mic and just, and he's, I don't know.
No, I'm going to swear.
Yeah.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to God or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And there may be some testimony in your questioning. And for the benefit of the members of the public, this is Joseph Fishinger. He's the traffic engineer who is retained by the board as an independent traffic engineer to assist the board in connection with the traffic and parking testimony and exhibits that's going to be provided not only by the civil engineer who we heard from, but also the traffic engineer for the applicant who we have not yet heard from.
Sorry, and for the record, it's Joseph Fishinger, Fishinger, with Brightview Engineering. Mr. Ferrante?
Yes. Right here.
Okay. My apologies for jumping around. I know some of these will be a little out of order. As far as where you located the playground, the parking spot in the southwestmost corner, is how far is the fence from that parking spot? My concern is, will you still be, if you're parked in that spot, will you be able to open your car doors to get out?
Yeah, we're showing the fence to be right, probably it's not dimensioned on the drawings, but looking at the drawing, it's about a foot away from the edge of the parking space.
I'm sorry, what was that dimension?
About a foot.
Is that sufficient for somebody to get out of their car, or will you need to adjust?
Well, the parking space is the standard parking space, so it's the same situation. If someone is parked next to you, can you open the door? You have to be careful.
And again, similar question regarding the space right next to the trash enclosure. Is there enough space for somebody to get in and out of the car next to the wall? Jumping around, you mentioned a dedication, whether that's an easement or a fee simple, up at Old Parsonage Road and Old Short Hills Road. Would you be agreeable to that easement encompassing enough space for a dedicated right turn lane? Should the county ask for that, or the county look to put one in the future?
I think on the applicant's map, we're going to comply with what the county requires of us, that they have jurisdiction over at that intersection.
Okay. The driveway onto Parsonage Road, do you know what the slope of that driveway is?
Yes, it's less than 4%.
And realizing that I've seen these exhibits tonight, just like everyone else, would you be agreeable to minor revisions to the driveway on Parsonage Hill Road, just to make sure that a garbage truck can swing that turn adequately? It looks kind of tight, but I haven't had a chance to look at it in detail.
Yeah, absolutely. We can, just to remind, sort of, one of the limitations we have that the township has a requirement for the maximum width of a driveway. We're trying to balance that. So to balance that, we would probably increase the size of the lane slightly.
I'm sure we can work something out between either my office or the town's engineer. Then regarding the sidewalk that connects your building out to Old Short Hills Road, can you verify the dimension of that sidewalk?
Yes, it's, sorry. What we went with is a 3-foot wide sidewalk. We went with a 3-foot wide sidewalk. We're proposing, as you see by the shaded area along the county right away, a 5-foot sidewalk, just to orient
And
the
is
board.
the intent for that sidewalk to be ADA compliant? It was my understanding you needed at least 4 feet for compliance with
3
ADA.
feet complies with the ADA, and that sidewalk will comply with ADA.
As long as you can agree to compliance with ADA, we'll cite the regulations later.
Yep.
And then with regard to the site triangles and the landscaping, would you be agreeable to limbing any trees up to 7 feet or cutting any shrubbery down to 2.5 feet? Anything within the site triangles? I know you didn't show them on the landscaping plan. I just want to make sure that those site triangles will be clear of any vegetation.
Correct.
And I just want to confirm that the site triangles are entirely on the subject property, correct? They're not on the adjoining property?
No.
My concern is that anything on their property doesn't block site visibility.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Those are all my questions, at least for this witness.
Good evening. I just have two questions. Graham Petto, here as board planner this evening. 2 questions, both related to the play area. First, could you just review what the pedestrian path? I know we've talked a little bit. I believe that the school or childcare location is at the lower level of the building. We haven't had architecture testimony to this point, but that's what I believe you've stated. What would the pedestrian path be to exit the building to reach that play area? I'm assuming students have to traverse
in
the
essence,
driveway?
yeah, the door that they would be accessing, obviously, I cannot comment on the interior functioning of the buildling.
Yeah, that's not my
Right,
question.
but
It's really the.
You see there are 3 doors to concrete sidewalks, so they would exit, and we providing a depressed curb, so they would walk up into the play area, as you can see, following the driveway. What we're providing also, you can see, as when we widen the driveway, we're striping no parking along a good width of that driveway. So no cars will be there. So the ideal is that the teacher would allow the students to travel in the crosshatch area where no parking will be stipulated.
Okay, would there be any opportunity or benefit to creating a crosswalk or having the students, come out and to the, exiting the door to the right and on that area instead of walking between spaces?
It's a good comment. We can add that,
Okay,
absolutely.
yeah, I think that might be an
Yes.
improvement to the site. My other question
I'm
is.
sorry, just to clarify,
Oh,
you're
sure.
talking about just a painted striped crosswalk on the
Yeah,
on the
crosswalk,
pavement?
yeah, and perhaps also some signage for vehicles traveling down the driveway to be alerted that students may be crossing this driveway from the upper level to the lower level lot.
We can also add traffic calming vis-a-vis speed bumps, that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
so I'll let traffic comment on that, but something to that effect. The second question that I have is really just related to the proposed size of the play area. Again, we haven't had much testimony about the school or childcare facility. I know it is proposed at 900 square feet, does that meet the recommended requirements or whatever requirements are?
I
of
I was
amount of space per
I was
student?
provided the space required, and so I cannot comment whether it meets the state per student square footage, but the architect will testify.
Oh, the architect. Okay,
Yes.
yeah. So we just may want to, plan to make sure that. doesn't
Correct.
apply. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do you have another
I have
question?
a follow-up question.
Okay.
Yeah, so I believe earlier, there was testimony that there would be no buses involved.
I did.
While I understand students will primarily be picked up and dropped off, are there any other circumstances in which case a bus may come through either for activities for, people attending, either the school or the religious services?
I don't know if we've had testimony to the use of the space, but I'll let you.
So we'll have to provide, the rabbi will provide operational testimony to answer that question.
Okay. Any other questions from members of the board? Okay. Yeah. Right, is there anything further from the engineer?
No.
Okay, so no.
No further direct.
Correct.
Respect, okay.
Okay, at this time, we'll open it to the public for questions regarding the engineer's testimony that was given tonight. If you have questions, you can come on up and then we'll have you just state your name, come on up to this mic right here. Name and address, and then because you're asking questions, you don't have to get sworn in.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Sumit Tony. SUMIT TONY. TONY. My address is 168 Old Short Hills Road. So I'm right opposite the property. This is my first meeting. I was not aware that this kind of a meeting is being conducted. I was not being given any notice.
These are here. Do you have questions of this particular witness?
Oh, not for the witness, but I just want to raise a point that I was not being notified. So
What's your address? 168?
168.
Short Hills Road, is he within the 200 feet?
I'm right opposite the property.
Is he on the 200 foot list? The way it works is if I may, Madam Chair?
Yeah, I'm just.
If you're within 200 feet of the perimeter of the subject property.
I am.
Bear with me, please.
Sure.
And you're on a list from the tax assessor's office demonstrating such, the applicant is required to provide personal notice by way generally of certified mail. If you're beyond that, then as would anyone else beyond the 200-foot
Yeah,
perimeter,
it's a different name.
it'd be published notice, because there's also published notice provided in the newspaper, both more than 10 days in advance of this evening.
It's
So
a
we're
different
finding
name. I
out.
see
Did you say
your
168
address.
Old Short Hills Road?
168 Old Short Hills
So
Road.
the way that it works is we submit a request to the township tax assessor, and ask for a list of all the property owners on the municipal records that own property within 200 feet. So we requested that list. This is the list that they provided us.
Okay.
At 168 Old Short Hills Road, the
Right.
town's tax records show that it's still being owned by Wenjin and Jun Mao.
Yeah, so I bought it from them.
But regardless, Counselor, was a certified mailing made within at least 10 days prior to the first hearing to this gentleman's address?
It was, and that's confirmed by the affidavit of service that we submitted in
Right.
advance of the first hearing.
But if it is submitted to my address, would it be addressed to me or would it be
It
addressed to
does,
someone else?
it needs to be sent to the address. That's the key, regardless of who might own it at the time. The tax assessor's list, it may have had a different name. Sometimes there actually may not be a name certain. There are new laws where people's names are redacted from addresses, so it's a mailing. But the applicant did meet the notice requirement by sending the certified mail. I'm pointing to our board secretary, she's not here this evening, but who cross-referenced all the certified mail slips. So the mailings were made pursuant to the affidavit of the applicant, but also through the slips that were provided to the board secretary who cross-referenced them. So, by the way, it's when it's mailed. The way the law works is it's not when it gets there, it's when it's mailed.
That's fair, that's fair.
10 days prior.
But I'm not supposed to open someone else's mail.
Well, again, no, I understand we could have a long discussion about what the law should be or shouldn't be, but the bottom line is the applicant met their notice obligation for jurisdictional purposes for the board. It was sent more than 10 days to the address on the list. So that's
it
good.
returned,
But if
or-
you have questions of the engineer,
Okay,
now's the
no-
time
no
to ask
question
those
for the
questions.
engineer because I'm new to the process.
Oh, okay.
I
Well,
was-
then, yeah, the way it works is after each witness, you ask questions of the witness based on their testimony that they provided.
Okay.
Each witness has an area of expertise generally. Sometimes there's a fact witness talking about operations. But the civil engineer, traffic engineer, planner, architects, they have their areas of expertise. They provide that. And then the board members and the members of the public have an opportunity to ask them questions. It's like
Okay.
a court proceeding.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Can I ask how long you've been at that address, if you're comfortable to say, just to have a sense of how?
Yeah, I
stale
moved
or-
in like on August 26th.
Okay, so,
August this year.
so
Yeah.
August of this year, okay, and that might have been similar to when you submitted the application and received the list, so, okay.
And the lists are usually earlier than the applications. They can be
Yeah.
as much as 6 months or more earlier.
Okay,
That's the way it works.
Welcome to town.
thank you.
Okay, other questions or any questions for Mr. Ferrante regarding the additional testimony? Yes, okay, come on.
I also.
Can I ask you to introduce yourself?
Yes, this is Stephen Chow from Two Park Road, across the street from Fulton.
Step up to the microphone.
Did you got his name? Okay, great. Questions for Mr. Ferrante?
Okay, so last time I tried to get an answer to the question that the size of the dry pool, and I wasn't able to get an answer. And so after looking at the newly posted the documents, I see that the size is 30,000 square cubic feet. So given the size, and also I was able to find the from the appendix G, I was able to see the town report, which has a drawing of the discharge rate.
Appendix G of the Stormwater Management
Page,
Report?
yes,
Okay.
page 206.
Okay, thank you, go ahead.
So basically basically what it says it's until you reach like 4 feet in height, it's pretty much going to be draining at 2 cubic feet per second. So and when the water level is higher, and then it's going to be draining at the higher rate. So like on this report, I think the basic assumption is that the main sewers are able to take on that water, in order for the dry pond to work effectively.
Do you have a question for Mr. Ferrante?
Yes, yeah, I'm getting to that. So is that your assumption?
I apologize. Could you repeat the question?
So in your report, that discharge rates.
Well, that's the inflow hydrograph that you're pointing to. So we have to calculate the inflow hydrograph and balance that with the water entering the basin. So all of that is in the stormwater report that the board engineers reviewed and accepted. I mean, I could go through specifically page by page.
I think he's asking you a question.
Yeah, I'm asking you a question. So what's your assumption for that discharging that diagram?
Well, the inflow hydrograph is based on the geometry of the basin and the amount of water coming into the basin, and based on the outlet flow control, it calculates how much water is retained over a time period, and that's what that graph represents.
Yes. So basically it shows the amount of the discharges for a specific height in the dry pond.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So basically for this dry pond to work effectively, the water needs to be the main sewer will have to be able to discharge water at the specified rate.
Correct.
Madam Chairman, if I may,
Yes.
there's been extensive testimony about the stormwater management plan. There are regs that specify exactly how the calculations need to be performed. They were prepared by a licensed civil engineer. They've been independently reviewed and testified to by the board's independent civil engineer. I would ask that we not spend an undue amount of time delving into Exhibit G of a 800-page
Well, I appreciate
stormwater
that. I
management.
think if he has a
Let's
specific
try to ask
question.
decorum, please, the board,
I do
the
have
chair
that
will
legitimate
address,
from
bear
concern.
with,
Please let us speak.
Objections are allowed to be made, and the chair will address the objection. It would do everyone a service if we all remained with civil and with decorum for these quasi-judicial proceedings, please.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
So, Mr. Levine, to that point, I understand we do not want to belabor the question, but I do want to allow you
Yes,
the
yes.
opportunity to ask your specific questions. So,
Right,
so
thank
far
you.
I've heard you ask about inflow and you have discharge questions specifically. I want you to be able to finish your question, but yes, understanding that we'd like to move
All
on
right,
as
so
well.
what I'm getting at is that my home has a easement that allow the sewer water to pass to downstream. So we can during the big storm we get to see what happened frequently. For example, in the last time when it has flood watch, we see the storm water shoot out of the cover.
Okay, so the question is just understanding if this stormwater basin would
Would function. I question that this will not may not be able to function as their design, because the existing storm water cover capacity may be used up completely during a big storm. So I'm not sure that it can take on. Which will be able to discharge water as is specified in the report.
If I may,
Mr. Ferrante can address your concern and speak to why he made the opinion and the board.
if I can sort of paraphrase the question, apologize if I'm not getting it correctly. I think the question that you're asking is the way the design of the basin is sized to regulate the outflow via an orifice initially. Then the next step is an overflow weir, which allows additional water. So all that has to be balanced so that the amount of water that leaves the site has to be less than the pre-development volume of water for that design storm. The overflow is connected to the stormwater system on Old Short Hills Road. So I think your question is, can the existing stormwater sewer on Old Short Hills Road has the capacity for the connection from the basin? Is that
Well, so sort of from based on my experience, I suspect that your dry pond that they are designed and that the discharge rate may not work as specified, because according to my observation, the existing the sewer main capacity is pretty much all used up.
Okay, so it sounds like you're sharing an observation, which we appreciate, but I don't know that he's going to be able to respond
Right,
to that as a question.
and then that brought us to the next question. So in the report, I see a bunch of simulation with a very short span in time. So basically, see the storm peak that's last less than an hour, and I understand that's your design is that your dry pond design is that designed to meet that requirement, but I'm not sure that's realistic. A lot of rain can.
No, I understand. I can answer that if you.
Okay.
Please,
the storm duration and storm design and stormwater flow and stormwater quantity is all dictated by DEP. And we have to follow those strictly. And we do. And this report follows that. So we have to, not only the DEP recommends the type of storm that we have to design to, it provides additional factors of safety that we have to apply. And in addition, DEP now requires us to not only to design the current intensity storm, 2, 10, and 100, we have to apply additional factors of safety to design for a future storm for 2,100. And that was what the calculations are based on.
Yes, but only you're showing, in your simulation, you're just showing that you would take the water of shore spike. But then I'm questioning for whether that would be applicable for a longer rain that have the.
Yes, I understand that. The typical storm that we design to is based on the intensities that DEP mandates. We as engineers calculate the time of concentration. Time of concentration is the distance that water will travel from the furthest hydrological point on the site to the discharge point. So let's say that we calculate that from sheet flow, in-pipe flow, basin flow, it's 10 minutes. So based on that 10 minutes, and we compare that to the intensity storm, gives us a flow in inches per hour that we have to design to. And that's what we design to.
Thank you. I feel like he was able to address your question.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
My first question is whether
Name
it's
is
definition. Name is Mark Lewis, 172 Old Short Hills Road. So, Mr. Fronte, with regard to the current application, when you came up with the designs and the adjustments that you're talking about today, I assume you're familiar with some of the unique risks, especially in this day and age, with synagogues from a safety standpoint.
I'm not sure I'm an expert to speak about safety for a synagogue. But ask your question. I apologize.
Well, so you are kind of starting to answer it. So did you take or have you taken any steps to consult with any security consultants about the safety risks of synagogues, especially given the horrific events of October 7th and the absolutely.
I'm well aware, except that that's typically not a civil engineer prerogative, if you will. It's an operational decision that the applicant decides to work with the architect, or if the applicant. Sorry. Again, to answer sort of the question briefly, we did not do any security analysis of the site in relation to the recent history that we see regarding synagogues. No.
So have you had any conversations with anybody affiliated with the Kai Center with regard to security risks in the neighborhood and for the synagogue?
No.
Are you aware of any conversations with any law enforcement agencies?
The police has reviewed the plan and commented on the plan.
What police?
The Millburn Police.
Millburn Police. So no consultation though with the FBI, no consultation with other law enforcement?
That question's been asked and answered.
Okay. So if someone did come to you with safety concerns where there have been any type of threats, because we know there's a history now in New Jersey of bomb threats, of shootings, of protests, are you aware of security measures you could take in the design of a synagogue?
Not specific to synagogue.
If I could answer the question, sir. Are you talking about the stormwater management or something?
Not at all.
If you're talking about, if you're talking about the design of the synagogue,
yes,
that might be the architect or operational witnesses, I suspect. I thought you were talking about, because this is questioning for the civil engineer based on his testimony, lighting, site,
Yeah.
you know, the circulation, et cetera.
Understood.
So I want to make sure everybody understands the context of your question. I frankly thought you were asking it in connection with stormwater management, or something related to what this gentleman testified.
No, I
to.
mentioned October
His
7th, I
area,
mentioned.
I heard everything.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
familiar with it all.
Yep.
Way too much. But I think the questioning has to be based on his testimony. He's a civil engineer. He testified to those areas of expertise.
So, and maybe I could be educated.
It might be another witness.
Maybe I could be educated. Do civil engineers do any type of work in terms of reinforcing?
Yes.
Or putting in barricades?
Absolutely, yes, of course.
So there are
Well,
absolutely.
then go ahead, ask him about that, the barricade.
So have you done that? Have you ever?
I've been around for a few years.
Yep.
And part of my history, I designed blast resistant structures. I've designed hardening of structures over my career. But in this particular case, no, because it was not required
Not required.
Of-
I believe last time.
or identified.
I think last time we spoke, you mentioned that you had no experience with houses of worship.
No, that was.
That wasn't the question, no. Not with respect to security, no.
You do have experience with houses of worship?
In the civil engineering context, to me, as I think testified last time, a school, a house of worship, from a site development perspective, doesn't vary much. There are no specific
This was
requirements.
a line of questioning that was pursued at the last hearing.
No.
I would ask that it not be reiterated.
Yes, it
No,
was.
He could, if I may, please, decorum, again, please. We should, self-control. Madam Chair?
Please.
If these are new questions based on new testimony that he provided this evening, as opposed to old
One of-
testimony and old questioning that you've already done, then the chair will, I suspect, allow you to proceed
Yeah.
within reason. The chair has discretion.
Totally
So
appreciate
you
it.
asked about safety and security.
And one of the
Appreciate
questions I asked last time was whether he had experience with houses of worship, going to his expertise in security. He said that he thought he did about a year or so ago. I asked him, maybe you could find that out. So I don't know. Did you go back to figure out whether you really have worked with a house of worship before?
As far as synagogue of this type, no. But I personally worked on many schools for disabled children, schools for K. We just finished a Goddard school. So from that perspective, I feel we're well qualified to do the site plan for this house of worship.
You might be well qualified, but nobody has asked you to do anything with regard to the security for this particular.
I've answered that question, no.
And the neighbors. Another question I have for you. Do you have any reason to believe that trees have already?
Sorry, we
Speaking the mic.
can't
Oh,
hear the
sorry.
questions. I'm
Can
sorry,
wait,
we
can
can't
you
be
just
having a
come forward
conversation.
also so you're not facing that way?
Okay.
So we can hear
It's
you?
hard. I wish he was, I
Sir,
could see him.
Mr. Franti,
Mr.
can you
Franti,
move
can you
up?
come forward?
Sorry.
Talk to each other there.
Okay. How are you?
Mr. Franti, my question to you, do you
I need
have
a
any
drink.
reason to believe that any of the trees you've referenced today have already been started to be planted on 165 Old Shorthurst Road?
I don't have that information, no.
Okay, would you be surprised if the trees were already starting to be planted when this application has not been decided on?
I'd be surprised, yes.
Okay. Give me 1 second here. Do you have any understanding of whether 1 Jefferson Road at any point is contemplated to be a part of this development?
I don't think that was something he testified to this evening.
Oh, did I? I'm sorry, I apologize. I
We didn't discuss any
Oh.
surrounding properties, except with respect to the setbacks.
I would think it would be relevant. When would that become relevant in terms of the?
You're asking about what might be contemplated for surrounding properties?
His neighbor, the property they
Neighbor,
already own
but it's
and are
not-
already operating.
It's not on this app. I mean, you could answer, but
No,
Well, it's not within the scope of
think
his
your answer
testimony.
would
He
be-
didn't mention it's nothing he testified.
Yeah.
It's not part of the site plan.
I'll hold on for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Hi,
Again, your
Christine.
name and address. for
I'm
the-
Christine Bass, 15 Fairfield Terrace.
May I ask you, Madam Chairman, a quick question before I start? I have quite a number of questions that are very detailed to the engineering, and would, for the efficiency of tonight's forum, would it be better if I just go through them quickly and they could respond later? Or I don't want to like get stuck on it, or if I'm getting too long, just maybe let me know and give me a heads up, because I don't want to
Sure,
waste
why
my
don't you take
time.
a few minutes, ask your questions, and then
You can go-
either, I guess, we can allow him to
Okay.
let us know if he'd like
Okay.
to respond to
Or maybe I'll
that
do like half, because I just want to kind of go
You
through.
may
it.
want to, though, I'm
Yeah.
probably thinking the same thing that applicant's counsel is.
Uh-huh.
If you go 20 or 30 questions, it might be hard for him to
No,
answer your
all right, I'll
questions.
try to be
So maybe one at
selective.
a time.
Yeah, okay, all right. Now, I just wanted to ask.
I know they're pertinent to the testimony he just gave.
Yeah, of course,
Okay.
absolutely, 100%. So, so I wanted to ask, I'm going to just focus on stormwater and engineering that you spoke to. So I wanted to understand, you did speak to the solids that go into the bioretention basins. And I wanted to know how you are going to clean, I know there's filters, but I wanted to understand in detail how often you'll clean out those solids. And how do you have stops in place from an engineering perspective that they don't bleed into the environment or the underwater, aquifers, et cetera? Because, we're all sort of built on these springs actually in this town.
And I think you're asking Mr. Ferranti.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Ferranti, I'm sorry.
Mr. Ferranti,
I
can you stand up
apologize.
again perhaps?
I'm a little
if you don't
tired,
mind,
my bad.
and answer her questions?
Yeah, so if I heard it correctly, the question was, how do you make sure that they're not being damaged by waste, debris, and so forth?
Yeah, well, it's not getting into the aquifers underneath.
Well,
Or
the-
somebody else as well.
No, it's a great question. The stormwater is conveyed via pipe. In this case, plastic pipe, and that from the catch basin in the parking lots, the water is collected and brought to the basin, whether it's the bio basin.
Goes to the biobasin first.
Correct. And the reason for that, as I indicated, is we're required to remove total suspended solids from the flow.
You said that.
Right, so-
Sorry, you're gonna have to kind of just let him answer the question.
So 80%. So that suspended solids gets accumulated in the biobasin. It's collected there. So if in the future, don't forget, I said we discussed it gets inspected. So let's say if the loading from the parking lot is so high as far as suspended solids, and primarily most of it comes as dust that's carried by cars, especially during wintertime with the ice and the slush, that gets trapped in the biobasin. So if the biobasin doesn't, as far as inspection, starts not to function properly, there will be inspection ports clean out that you can inspect and clean out the sand filter. If the sand filter at some point in time gets so clogged with the sediments, obviously it has to be then redone.
In terms of, I understand why you're building a large square, retention pond, whatever you want to call it, with grass lining it. They are really, what I want to understand, and actually maybe Martha can weigh in on this as well as you. There's so many large developments going on right now. Like we have huge developments with Says coming online. We have, a bunch of, the Metropolitan. Not all of these places, particularly if you're doing something in Manhattan, right, on a lot of, acres, use these retention basins, and they are less expensive to construct, I believe. I might be wrong. So is there a way that we can use possibly like 10 dry wells, or I don't know what the number would be, allocated across the line, so it's visually not, and you can also then plant above the dry wells, and you can get a lot more, coverage for people.
I think that was a similar question to Ms. Canfield.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
been answered.
well, it's a little different than what Alex is.
And
But-
also you are testifying a bit, which this isn't the public comment, we haven't
Oh.
sworn you in yet. So if you could be succinct in your questions, and he could perhaps be succinct in his answer.
Okay, I'll try. Thank you
So
for
we
the
can keep
advice.
track of that.
I mean, if I may, just the quick answer is that dry wells we're not allowed to use dry wells for anything above the 2-year storm.
Okay, all right, then I understand what you're saying now. Will you be putting, I might have missed this, are you going to be putting a chain link fence around them to make sure no one
Yes.
drowns? Okay.
There is, yes.
And so will you be covering the chain link fence with trees so people can't see the chain link fence? So it's less industrial looking?
Well, we are providing an aluminum ornamental fence,
Yeah, I know you said that.
and which visually, aesthetically, it's not an eyesore. It's not a chain link fence, obviously. We are providing, as I showed, the landscaping plan and shrubbery. We didn't specifically design to hide the fence, though.
Oh, thank you for letting me know. So the waste truck, you talked a lot about that. I'm assuming that's coming all the way in, so it's going to be disruptive to somebody like on Madison Terrace, for example, kind of a lot of heavy equipment on Saturday morning at 6 a.m. versus doing curbside pickup.
Again, as I testified, it's private carting. The scheduling is really up to the operational side of the synagogue, as far as what time they come in on site. We can provide you.
So it's private pickup then?
I was basically informed that it's a private pickup.
Was that testified to, or are we gonna give that an operations?
Did we get a stipulation as to the timing,
No.
when they
No.
wouldn't come?
We didn't. I mean,
That's right.
I'm going to just jump over to the
No,
light
go ahead.
question.
Take your time.
So on the light question, I took some time actually to walk around some other religious institutions in town the past couple weeks, and I was over, I believe it's Christ Church, over off Highland, and I was
Again,
looking.
the question, yeah.
Wait, I'm sorry. Is that
I just
well, the
want to make sure we got to the
okay.
question.
So
Yep.
my question is that you have you have 25 lights in the parking lot. I think you said between 10 and 12 feet off the ground on little mini pilasters, right? So that will do. Even if you show them, it will give more light bleed off for the neighbors that particularly are on Madison Terrace. And so I was wondering, would you consider or have you looked into doing a 36-inch high light that's less, like it's less blowing out and it's more diffused, because that would make a big difference for the people living behind it.
If I may, the
You're
board's
testifying
engineer.
beyond the question is, did you consider a 36-inch instead of the 12-foot, correct?
No.
But the foundation for that question is to reduce spillage of light.
That's
into
why I was
Madison.
explaining it.
Correct.
And the board engineer's report states that there will be no off-site light spillage. So the premise of the question is incorrect.
It is incorrect, because I know a lot about lighting.
We can't,
Okay.
and you can't testify yet.
That's fine.
And
It's fine. I will
as
not.
a
I will
fact
not
witness or an
testify.
expert.
Have you consulted? Because I don't think there's any lighting experts. Have you consulted with a lighting designer, or only with an engineer when looking at the lighting?
Our lighting plans we designed them internally with the help of the manufacturer of the light fixtures, who was an expert in lighting design. And so based on that, and we have the township requirements, which are important that we have to meet, we come up with a lighting design.
You talked about the dark sky standards. I don't think that's a legal standard. So what I wanted to ask you about is there's different levels of Kelvin. 3000 is still on the blue spectrum. And I was wondering if you go down to 2200 Kelvin, would you consider that, or did you look at that to have a warmer light for the residential area?
No, we basically use 3000, which is the general requirement that we're always held to. We did not design a lower Kelvin, as you stated. No.
Okay. Did you review Short Hills code for lighting trespass before making these lighting plans?
Yes.
Does-
Well, the Milburn, right? Short
Yes.
Hills, Milburn.
No, I'm sorry, Melbourne, correct.
Yes.
Because it's about light trespass very specifically, and it's very interpretive. Okay, I shouldn't have said that, I'm sorry. So you talked about proposing a sidewalk. I wanted to make sure it's on your side, right? Is it something that you feel that you would need to put a sidewalk on the other side or on Parsonage, like how you're going to deal with different attendees going down Parsonage Hill Road, for example, that might live in the neighborhood?
The sidewalk that's on Old Short Road is existing,
Right.
if you recall, right? And we were asked to upgraded, and we agreed to. We also discussed that the only existing sidewalk in the area is on Parker. There are no sidewalk that, other than along our eastern property line. So based on that, we felt that the neighborhood did not lend itself to sidewalks.
When, I don't know if this is a question for you, so I apologize
No
out of my
problem.
stupidity, but in terms of building classification, because you probably know that because you've done schools and also houses of worship, is there a definition of like what a school is when you look at allocations of square footage? So right now, your square, can I just finish my question?
Do you mean internal or external?
Internal, I
He
mean
hasn't
internal.
testified as
It's
to this, and
internal,
it's
I think
outside of the
that's to
scope.
the architect.
Yes.
Yeah.
That-
Are you
that-
talking about
But it
interior to
actually,
the
but it
building?
impacts the engineering and the land use as well, so that's why I
Okay,
was
you can
putting it
finish the
forward, that's
question and
okay.
we can let you know.
Okay. So the question is right now, the allocation appears, and I might be wrong in saying this, that I think you had 8,000 square foot allocated for worship and closer to 12,000 square foot allocated for classrooms. So it appears the allocation is more of a school structure. And I was wondering, like, how you address, the legal aspects of whether it's a classification as a school or as a house of worship.
This is outside the scope of his testimony.
Okay, I just,
Yeah, legal aspects would be, I think what you're probably talking about is planning, of whether the use is a.
exactly, it's a conditional
bear with
use.
me,
Oh, I'm
a
sorry.
house of worship use as opposed to a school use or something. And I suspect that might be something that, I believe a planner is intending to testify on behalf of the applicant as well.
Okay.
And we have one, of course, a darn good one, if I may. He's not objecting. That might be.
But further questions regarding, a couple more questions maybe about the site
Engineer.
plan.
Yeah, no,
The engineer
Yeah,
and
I'll
then-
make it quick. I'm sorry, two more. I'll do two more. No, go on. I'll leave you. So in terms of the trees, I know that, you talked about, I'm not allowed to make a comment, okay. So in terms of the trees, there's difficulty. I mean, you talked about a fund, 26K to go to the town for the trees that you can't fit into the space because it's a lot of trees. What I wanted to ask you in terms of and I think that Frank touched upon this, you are cutting down some larger growth trees in terms of caliper. And so most of the caliper standards, that are required by our town are between 3 and 4 caliper, which are they're Charlie Brown trees, basically, Home Depot specials. So, this is something for people living in the area, I guess, would want to see if maybe you would consider using a higher caliber tree. Yes, they're expensive, but for example, a 5 caliber to 6 caliber tree is significantly taller and broader in terms of its leaf foliage. And they
You're asking
run,
if they considered higher, higher caliper, which would, I guess, be a higher.
right,
A taller tree at installation, correct?
right. So,
Okay, so that, I know the sows we need to save for later.
well, it's very
under
nuanced, but I understand
testimony,
what you're saying.
But it's questioning
yeah.
only now.
On behalf of the applicant, I can say they intend to comply with the requirements of the ordinance.
Okay. And then I think this goes back to the other gentleman's question, and you may or may not be able to answer this. Have you been working on any additional properties on that specific block in terms of designs that would be affiliated with the center?
Not affiliated with the center, no.
Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for all the,
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Good evening. Evan Frankel, 6 Park Road. Can I have your water? You can talk this way.
No,
Secondarily, we did say daylight savings on Sunday morning at 2.
Yeah,
That clock is
that's wrong.
freaking me
That
out.
clock's
Okay,
wrong,
good.
We're not gonna be here too much longer.
No, please. I'm going to focus also on security, and I know you may not be an expert, but I do think that the layout has some impact. What considerations have been made in the site design to control unauthorized access and manage crowd control?
To answer that question, the site plan as indicated, we're not providing a perimeter fencing and gates to the property. We are we are respecting the residential neighborhood, and so we're not trying to create a fenced-in compound. So the answer to your question is no.
No, you have not. Okay. How, you've indicated that you've moved the entry and the egress positions off of Parsonage Hill, correct?
Correct.
So how does the property's entry and exit layout support secure access control, including emergency access for first responders or controlled access for the congregants of the Chabad?
So the two-part question. As far as emergency vehicles vis-a-vis a fire truck, we've considered that.
When you say considered it, I mean. you
We designed for
testified at
it,
length about
correct.
the Turning template.
Absolutely.
Geometry, the turning.
All right, so if you can handle a ladder truck of that magnitude, you can handle an ambulance, as I indicated. So from that perspective, emergency vehicles will have no problem accessing the site.
Has the proximity of neighboring residential properties been taken into account in the placement and design of any security or containment features, barriers, secure entry and exit points, surveillance coverage?
No.
What specific measures are in place to facilitate safe and quick evacuation if critical threat occurs?
Well, that's more of a, from the building, it's an architectural question that he'll answer. The site itself does not require that level of design, if you will.
In the event of a large-scale emergency or evacuation, how does the site design prevent or limit disruption to neighboring streets, properties, or infrastructure? Do you know?
No.
I think that's it for the questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other questions? Okay.
I had no intention of speaking. I'm Wendy Prashker. I live at Prashker, and I live at 26 Park Road. So I walk a lot, and I walk across the street and onto that.
And you're directing questions, Mr. Franzen?
I am,
Okay,
yes.
fantastic. I just want to make
Sorry,
sure. Oh, no,
it's
that's
regarding the waste removal.
Okay.
So very often, I know that there have been bar mitzvahs at the High Center since they first infiltrated the neighborhood. But, so there's garbage very often on the street, next to the sidewalk on Old Short Hills Road. Paper plates, little,
Ms. Prashker, you're
liquor bottles.
testifying, but can you ask the question?
Yes, my
though?
question is, how, is there a way to stipulate, to make sure that especially after an event, that the garbage is removed within a certain amount of time? So I understand it's private garbage removal, and I also understand that once this is done, nobody has any control of anything.
Well,
So
ma'am,
I would
ma'am,
like there to know, have
ma'am,
you?
Ma'am, you have to, I think the question was asked, there may be more
Yes,
questions.
that's the question.
But let's let him or the applicant answer the question.
Well, I don't think this witness can stipulate as to that sort of thing. We can certainly ask the rabbi as an operational question if that's something that's workable, but I don't think that's within his field.
And the rabbi will be testifying as to operations,
That's
correct?
correct.
Okay, so it'll be another witness.
Okay.
Do you have any
But
more questions
thank
of
you,
this
I'll take
witness?
No.
No?
Hi, Bailey Lewis, 172 Old Short Hills Road. I just need some clarification on the corner of Parsonage and Old Short Hills Road. You talked about a dedicated right turn lane. Is that Parsonage going onto Old Short Hills Road, or is that Old Short Hills Road? Well, I guess that would be a left, or coming from the other direction. Like, where is that dedicated right-hand turn lane?
As far as from off-site, from the public streets?
It was discussed that there was an easement and there was a dedicated.
Yes, let me, I can show you.
Our engineer that brought that up, but that, yeah,
Okay,
that he
sorry.
referenced it.
Yeah,
No, that's okay, so I think he could respond to that, but that's okay, if you're able to
Yeah.
respond to that.
Do you have any objection, Council?
No.
So, and Mr. Ferrante can correct me if I'm wrong, they are not proposing a right turn lane. My question was, would they be agreeable to provide the easement should the county in the future want to add one? It's my understanding that they are not proposing any changes to those curb lines.
Okay.
And my response was, we will comply with what the county requires of us. That's under their jurisdiction.
Thank you. Just want to make sure her question got.
It's kind of a two-part question. Is that relevant or is that later than these planning comments? That number 5 under section 3, it was lumped into the forester report and the fire department report. It said, upon review of the property survey and site plan, a right-of-way encroachment has been identified at the northeast corner of the property where the cartway of Parsonage Hill Road encroaches roughly 13 feet onto the site at the intersection of Old Short Hills Road. Further, 3 utility poles are in this location or sited on the property. The board planner recommends, as a condition of any approval, that an access utility easement or a right-of-way dedication be recorded to cure the encroachment of the cartway, where such dedication should provide sufficient clearance for a 4-foot sidewalk and incorporate the utility poles. As needed, the applicant should relocate the proposed signage in this location to accommodate a minimum 10-foot setback from the relocated property line, or the property line should not be relocated. It's very confusing the way the planner had said this, 10 feet from the cartway to meet the intent of the standard. I just need that to be clarified, and is that still relevant based on the new site plans?
I think, since it's my report, so the applicant has testified that they'll be seeking to remedy the encroachment with Essex County. So that is a process that they're going through. So that was the beginning part of our comment, was to remedy that situation, and that's what they'll be doing with the county, because that is their roadway jurisdiction, that their cartway. With respect to the sign relocation, and this maybe where Mr. Ferranti can, I believe that the sign has been relocated, pursuant to meet the standard for the setback from the property line. So it's no longer, the intent of the end of this comment, which was a little confusing, was should the sign be located less than 10 feet, or, they want it closer, it should at least be 10 feet from, because the road encroaches onto the site, the sign should be at least 10 feet from that curb line, essentially the cartway.
So 10 feet off the edge of the road?
Correct. Mhm.
Okay, and is it still considered?
Mr. Ferranti can
Okay.
comment. I believe that the sign has been relocated.
Yeah, where would that sign be located?
Well, it's shown on our drawings, and we had agreed to, if we needed to relocate the sign based on what the county's going to say, we will do that. So, but the sign is shown on our drawing.
So
I could-
it's
I could
still in the
point-
same corner, 10 feet back?
Yes,
And you're not gonna cut any trees in that corner because there are trees right in that corner.
there are. We stipulated that there's heavy vegetation in that whole side of the both roads.
Right,
But
but you
the-
earlier testified you're not gonna cut any of those trees in that corner, so.
Right, but there
would
is-
you be cutting those trees if the sign was located 10 foot back in that corner?
We've located the sign so that we don't have to cut trees,
Okay.
and it's still visible.
Okay, and it's still in that corner?
It's still in the corner, yes.
Okay, but it's in an area where no trees will be cut as a result of the sign?
Correct.
Okay, that was it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other questions?
Okay. Hi, Jessica Margolis, 2 South Beechcroft Road. Hello. So if you find that the playground needs to be bigger based off of like childcare standards, is there room to make the playground bigger? Because I think it's 900 square feet, you said, allows for, it's like 35 square feet per child. So that allows for 25 children. So if there's more than 25 children that attend the school, is there room to make that playground bigger without taking away from the 105 parking spaces that are allotted?
A couple of questions. The first answer is that we will not reduce the amount of parking, otherwise we'll need a variance, and we are not requesting a variance for parking. So whatever the size of the new playground, we would have to incorporate on the site. I can tell you from projects that I've done, schools to stagger the students so that you want to limit the amount of students in the playground. So not all the students are there at the same time. But again, the architect will define those requirements for us. So up to now, 900 square feet, which we've accommodated. There is some room to grow on the site without impacting impervious or parking.
Right, because I mean, I have kids who have attended preschools, and it's very important. But also, I think after 2013, according to the.
Ma'am, do you have
Okay.
another question?
Sorry.
of this witness?
So you do have room to expand if there's more than 25 students.
Yes. Limited.
Oh, I'm sorry. Since I'm here. I'm Andrew Cap, 18 Madison Terrace. Was there an alternate spot for the playground considered, or is that the only spot that's available?
Yes, we considered two other locations. One location that's operationally probably preferred, but that would put the playground on the front yard, and the township does not allow playgrounds in the front yard. So the other location would have been next to the entrance of the school on the north side. But we chose this location because it's for the children. It's better to be somewhat segregated from the operations of the property to this location.
So you wouldn't be able to put, but it's town ordinance that you wouldn't be able. But it's also required because of the school that you have the playground?
It's,
Do you know the answer to that question?
it depends from what I'm familiar with, the New Jersey education requires playgrounds for schools.
I prefer, if you know, please answer.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it's just a curiosity.
Because I don't want to mislead you.
No, the answer is yes, but I also am familiar with schools that use parking lots as playgrounds.
And is the playground planned to be lit separately from the parking lot?
No.
And I guess we'll talk about the operational, whether it will be used at night during operations portion. Okay. And then you moved the driveway closer to my property line, but the parking lot itself did not move from the original drawings?
No.
Thank you.
Sorry, my voice is gone. Jean Pasternak, 342 Hobart Avenue. For the engineer, did you define the land use and engineering to the existing deed restrictions for this property?
I'm not aware of deed restriction for the property.
And just again, the question should be toward the testimony that was given tonight, too.
And if you could get the microphone a little closer in light of your voice.
I know.
I know you said you're losing it. The voice.
Is this your second?
You never know how a record's going to read later on, so I want to make sure it's clear.
Is this your second or third adjustment of the plans for this project?
It's, we're in, I think, revision 3. Yes, it's part of the design process, yes.
And was there a reason why the playground wasn't included in an earlier version?
It was not in the program that was given to us, no.
And can you confirm that that's the number of students that was?
The next witness was testified on operational. I cannot tell you the number of students.
Do you know if there will be any buses? You said there won't be any now, but could there be some in the future? Have you considered that?
It's an operational question.
Okay. And do you know if there are any trees that have been taken down at this point? Other than
If there were any trees removed, well, there was the site structure that was on the property was demolished. Whether the trees were taken down during that period, I can't tell you.
Any other questions?
Good evening. My name is Jeffrey Feld, 11 Alexander Lane, Short Hills, New Jersey. Just want to follow up based on a statement. We just heard that this is the third proposal.
Just make sure you're asking a question
No,
to Mr.
we just
Fleming.
heard this was the thing.
He
Can someone
said that-
explain
he
the
didn't say third
change?
proposal, I think he said the third version of the design.
Third revision.
Third revision. That means there had to be an original vision. Can you please tell us the change between the first revision and the second revision, which I think the second revision was probably the August application? Because there was I believe you attended a technical review committee
We did.
in June.
Correct.
Based on that meeting, what changes went to the first proposal, which is really the second proposal, which is the application in August?
Right.
And the third is what we're hearing tonight. Can you tell us really what the change was between the first and the second?
If I may, I don't see the relevance of that question. It's not ultimately what we're proposing. It's not ultimately what the board is considering and deciding upon. It was an interim revision months ago. I don't see the value of delving into that. in any
I agree.
way.
I mean, I think the purpose of the design review committee, which happens prior to anybody at this board seeing it, is to improve the design and to be more consistent with the plan and the vision for the town. So I think what we're seeing is hopefully improved. If Mr. Ferranti is able to comment on it, I will allow him to.
No,
respond to
we
that.
had an excellent TRC, technical review meeting, and comments were provided to us, which we had taken into consideration and are reflected in the plan. Specifically, for example, as an example, the township professionals wanted a two-lane exit from the site onto Old Shore Hills Road to facilitate left-hand turns and right-hand turns. And that was a good comment that we incorporated.
But there's no changes about the size or impervious surface areas.
Although we tweaked the site all the time, so there was minor tweaking, but no major. In other words, the site plan presented at the TRC doesn't, other than the driveway that I just mentioned, is very little changes to it.
All right, the other one is based on a comment that was made by our township engineer. She described our town as a fully developed community. And you were talking about your experience. How many schools or synagogues have you ever designed in a fully developed community?
I think there's been a series of questions about how many synagogues he's designed in the past, and he's answered that, I think, twice now, two different
Can
years.
you respond to the question?
Talking about the nature of the communities that you were.
Well, most of the schools that I've designed recently are all in very well-established communities and similar to this one.
So they are fully developed?
Yes,
that's a
probably more than this site, this town.
Thank you. Anybody have further questions?
Can I go again, please, if I'm allowed?
You can ask one more question because I understood this is your first, but we're not opening it for a whole second round, but I do want to be sensitive to. Yes, I understand that you're learning the process and I want to encourage it. I'm not going to invite everybody to come back.
Fair enough. I'll make it quick. Sumit Tony, 168 Old Shore Hills Road. The present parking or the present driveway, does it have a provision to take any buses inside?
The answer, I've answered that question. We're not designing for buses.
Is there a possibility of buses to come in?
We don't believe so, but we have a separate witness that will testify operationally in details of how the site will function.
Okay, so maybe I can ask this question to the civil engineer. Is there the present driveway, can this take any buses to come in?
Oh, you're asking if it could accommodate?
Yes.
If it physically could accommodate a bus?
If the buses can come in and can get parked there in the present plan.
The latest plans we only received today. I haven't had a chance to check.
Okay, Mr. Franti, could you respond?
I can answer that question.
Will there be buses?
If
Would it
it-
accommodate?
Again, there's typically two types of buses, the larger, longer buses and the smaller buses. We've designed the driveway for a large fire truck, ladder truck. So based on that, a typical small school bus will have no trouble accessing the site. It's a matter of fact, just comparing the dimensions of a typical larger school bus to the ladder truck, I would, it's my professional opinion that bus will be handled on the site.
Okay. And if a bus has to come in, how many parking spots a bus will take?
None, because it's not designed for bus parking.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions from new members of the public? Okay. We are at almost 10:30 PM. Is there anything further that we would need to do with this witness?
Maybe we can address that. You've completed the direct examination, and we've had the public questioning of the civil engineer. So we're done with the civil engineer. Your next witness is who?
Traffic consultant.
Traffic, TPO, okay. And I suspect that might take more than a few minutes.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure, to cover the area, certainly. I'm just wondering if there would be any benefit of any sort of brief overview. I hate to squander even a few minutes if it's available to us. What is the cutoff time?
It's generally 10:30, yeah, and which we're at 10:27, so.
I can't
And we
imagine.
allowed the last meeting to go longer because we were sort of holding it, so that one went up a bit longer, so.
Yeah.
We're looking to close it.
But I think to accommodate, if it's something that can be done in 5 minutes and then, or so, and then he's gonna be back again, but what utility might that have? We're not gonna tell the applicant how to present the
Can
case.
you give us a little taste?
Sure.
Please do so. And, well, I'll get you up here, we'll get you sworn in, we'll get you qualified.
And we have our independent traffic engineer here as well, who, as I understand it, will be back next week as well.
Madam Chair, can I just, one housekeeping, because there was something that was mentioned that I just want clarification from the engineer. He said the operational side of the synagogue. I'm assuming it's the one facing the neighborhood, or is it the left side?
Excuse me, can you
So you
repeat
just
the
wanted
question?
to clarify, you mentioned the operational side of the synagogue, and you wanted to know what you meant by that.
Well, it's the operation of the synagogue.
What are
Do you think he mean, do you mean the use of the synagogue, or she thought you meant a side? What did
The
you mean by
use.
the word side?
The use.
Use,
Okay,
okay.
thank you.
In relation to the playground?
Yes, you answered that question, but mine was you referenced a side of the actual property itself, the operational side. And the operational side is the back side of this property?
No, I didn't mean that.
Again, clarification.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, question. So
Sorry.
given the time now, that we are at 10:30, would it maybe make more sense to have this next witness
Yeah, I would,
continue uninterrupted at the next session? So as not to, have to break things up for the public and.
I understand, I think, why don't we get their professional sworn in, so that we can expedite going forward.
That
for
way
the
he
next
can just begin
application.
testifying.
Yep, just to keep us moving.
Can you just state your name and spell it for the record?
Andrew Vischio, V as in Victor, ISCHIO.
And business address is fine.
92 Park Avenue, Rutherford, New Jersey.
And please raise your right hand. Do you swear to God or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and Mr. Fisher, yes, I swore you in earlier. There we go. Please proceed.
And could you just briefly acquaint the board with your educational background and professional experience, please?
Absolutely. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. My license is active and in good standing. I've been practicing in the industry for over 13 years. I hold a bachelor's and master's degree, both in civil engineering from Georgia Tech. I have worked approximately half of my career in the public sector, previously as the director of traffic engineering for the city of Jersey City. And I have been accepted before numerous land use boards as an expert in traffic engineering throughout the state of New Jersey.
I'd like to offer this
We'll
gentleman.
be hearing you as a traffic engineer, and you were responsible for the preparation of the traffic documents for this.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, is the board willing to accept this gentleman's credentials as an
We
expert?
are.
Thank you.
It is now 10:31. I don't know how much you want to launch in and begin. I guess I can leave that to you. We had additional questions, and now we've sworn him in. I don't know how far you would like to go.
Do you anticipate an overview and an estimate of how long it'll take?
Would you be able to give a 10-minute overview?
Yes.
I'd like to do that.
Okay,
Okay.
and the board will
And we will
extend the
hold
time,
questions.
it's time for this evening till 10:45?
We have to vote on
We did it last
Yes.
time.
that. No, I'm asking, do we have to vote on that?
A motion second and all in favor would do it.
some.
We have a motion.
Well, no, I'm not making the motion.
Oh, I'm
That's
sorry.
what the procedure is.
Yes, that would be the motion, second, and all in favor to formally extend our time beyond 10:30.
I will
To
move
10:45.
extend for 10 minutes. Give it a second. Okay. Then we can't move on.
No second.
Let me ask you this, with the next hearing being a special meeting and I assume that's already been noticed pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act. Is there any ability to discuss or consider relaxing that 10:30 cutoff time at that special meeting?
We could consider it as a board, however, I'm also concerned after 3 hours of our undivided attention that it's late in the evening and many of us have full-time jobs in the day that we won't be as sharp and won't be able to absorb the information. We just want to make sure the quality of the conversation is strong for you two. We could consider that potentially, but it wouldn't be much more than probably 15 minutes.
I believe the chair is saying certainly you can make the request again
Right.
next time.
Okay, so that said, we will be, as you alluded to, we are going to be carrying this application with no further required notice to a special meeting, which is occurring next Wednesday, which we've scheduled with the goal of trying to allow this application to continue, in good faith. On November 13th, 7:30 PM, the same location here, Milburn Town Hall. Anything further?
Yeah, Madam Chair. And I recognize, Counselor, as you know, that there's a 95-day period of time for, under the time to act provisions for the board. If my calculations are correct, that would end on or about December 2nd. We obviously have one more meeting that we've, as a board, specially arranged for and noticed, et cetera, to accommodate the applicant. I don't believe, we certainly don't have one scheduled before December 2nd as I sit here right now. So would the applicant be willing to provide a modest extension of time beyond December 2nd for the board to act on this application?
At this juncture, I'd like to reserve the final decision on that until we see how things progress at the special meeting.
Okay, that's within the right of the applicant to do so, since we do have a meeting scheduled. So we can address that again, and certainly will, on the 13th. 13th.
And I can certainly say it's not the applicant's intent, and it would be fruitless anyway, to somehow try to play a shell game or play games with, I mean, the deadlines are very clear, and it's in nobody's best interest to obfuscate them or play games with them. But by the same token, the applicant does have a very strong interest in seeing this case processed and processed efficiently. And as Mr. Warner does correctly point out, there is a required time frame within which the board is supposed to act.
And there are options that the applicant could take, options that the board can take. But certainly, it's at least my opinion, the board has accommodated and moved things reasonably, if not more than reasonably, for the applicant to proceed with this application, including scheduling a special meeting date this month. I appreciate, Counselor, you recognizing that as well in the affirmative, so thank you.
For sure, yes.
And noticing same, so I would certainly and hope, if not anticipate, if not expect, that the applicant would be reasonable as reasonable as the board is being in accommodating the applicant with these hearings and moving things forward as best we can, so that everyone has a full and fair opportunity to process and through the quasi-judicial proceedings to have this application, these proceedings play out, and everyone gets an opportunity to present their testimonial and documentary evidence, make public comment, et cetera. I hope, if not expect, that the applicant will afford the same courtesies to the board and provide a reasonable time frame for the board to hear this case properly and hear everyone and decide this case properly. In my opinion, it would be in the best interest of everyone, including the applicant, to do so. So I hope I'm correct in my expectations.
Yeah, and we're certainly appreciative of the board affording us a special meeting next week. We look forward to taking full advantage of that opportunity. And we also, I think, hope that there will be a continuing spirit of cooperation. And if there needs to be consideration of additional possible special meetings in order to get this done and get it done in a timely way, we would hope that the board would continue to remain open-minded and flexible in that regard.
The board will be open-minded, the board will remain open-minded and reasonable at all times.
It's a process question.
Thank you.
Can I ask a process question? And then we get out, it's a
Up to the
process.
chair.
You can ask a brief question. We're looking to conclude.
I think there's a lot of people don't fully grasp the process right now.
What, I think she said yes. What's the question?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of people that don't grasp the process. So my question is, at what point, we get the opportunity to cross-examine the witness, but I heard you when you first explained the process, I thought there was an opportunity after each witness to make an objection, to make a statement on record.
At the very end of the proceedings.
The
Let me
whole proceeding.
very quickly, if I may, Madam Chair, because we want you to everyone to understand as best as possible. It's pursuant to the Municipal Land Use Law and Open Public Meeting Act, other statutes. Essentially, the way it works, again, is after each witness, it doesn't have to be after each witness, but it may be after each witness. Board members, board professionals, members of the public question that witness, not testimony. People are always going to have to say a little something in order to get the context of the question, but within reason. And then when all the witnesses are done, then members of the public, assuming there are no witnesses, expert or otherwise, from the public, other than members of the public, make a comment. Your comment is just as important as any other witness. So that's why I swear you in. That's why it's testimony, not just comment. And that is essentially once at the end, after the applicant has presented their entire case, all their witnesses, each of whom we will all, including members of the public, have an opportunity to question.
So we have more flexibility at the end to raise.
Exactly, to make your public comment / testimony, yes.
And did you say that we could bring a witness?
It's up to members of the public. I mean, the board, it's a quasi judicial proceeding, and if appropriate witnesses are brought by the applicant or others, then the board will consider testimony from the appropriate witnesses.
So just a quick question. I know we were talking about the 95-day rule. If for some reason the applicant doesn't agree to an extension, which would be unfortunate given that we didn't hear them the past 2 meetings when they requested not to be heard, irrespective of that, if they hold steady to that deadline, is the board able to deny the application on the basis of the proceedings not having been fully completed and us not having heard from all of the witnesses, et cetera?
And again, this is hypothetical. I don't expect it to happen. I expect the applicant to be just as reasonable as the board.
Of course, but
but in the event, in the hypothetical,
Yes.
if I may, I'm sorry. In the hypothetical, there are mechanisms that if the applicant were to try to get what's called an automatic approval, which the court may or may not grant by virtue of the 95-day period expiring, and I don't expect that the applicant would do that. But if they did that under the circumstances, notwithstanding how reasonable the board has been and will continue to be, then the board can do things such as a dismissal without prejudice, so as to avoid an automatic approval. But again, these are things that hypothetically can happen. I don't expect they will happen. Certainly, the board will continue to be reasonable, and I have no reason to believe the applicant won't continue to be reasonable.
And we would hope that if, things proceed along efficiently and within the rules, that hopefully it would be largely a moot point, a non-issue.
Exactly.
Is it a procedural question?
It's
Go ahead.
procedural, absolutely. If I have specific questions of the board members in terms of like your due diligence as a board member, like a review issue, can I just finish my question? Sorry. Do I email that to you?
No emails.
Okay, so, no,
Open
can I
Public
just
Meetings
finish my
Act, everything
question?
must take
I just want
place.
to finish my question, please.
Go ahead.
So do I approach the bench? Do I tell you in the beginning? Because there's no room to fit that in, so I wanted to understand.
Yeah, the nothing takes place outside the open, duly noticed, open public meetings that we have. And when it's time to question a witness, if you feel the compulsion to ask a question of a board member, ask that question. I may chime in from a legal perspective, as is my job, and it may or may not be something that's appropriate to ask of a board member.
Unfortunately, when
Generally, the questions have to be other witnesses.
No, I understand, but I tried to ask, I wanted to ask the question of the board member, but you specifically told me I could only ask the witness, so what should I do?
Again, if you, I don't know why you would want to ask a board member, and I'm not sure that it'd even be appropriate to ask a board member a question. The board
Can I
members
ask
are
you now?
volunteers serving the board, and they do their due diligence. There's no, the questions are of the applicant's witnesses.
So I can't ask a question.
Could she answer a question of Eileen as the secretary?
No, you're saying you can't let me ask a question. I just wanted to ask if you hired any professionals that were not township employees and not their clients.
Yeah, we did, if I may, Madam Chair. Mr. Fishinger, the independent
Yes,
traffic
that-
consultant, was
Okay.
retained by the board to,
What's the
in light of the complexity and the importance of the traffic and engineering and parking testimony. Mr. Petto, Ms. Callahan, myself,
Well, can you-
we're
Ms.
not
Callahan is an
employees of the
employee.
municipality either, as
And
far as
Ms.
I
Callahan's
understand.
an
Ms. Callahan is an
employee.
I apologize, Ms. Callahan is. I
Yes,
apologize.
I just wanted to ask, I mean, did you hire also like a separate engineer, like a full separate engineer besides Ms. Callahan?
No, Ms. Callahan is representing the board.
Okay, so you did not, thank you.
Okay,
Well, one final question, because that made me realize. If for some reason we wanted to get an outside stormwater management expert to review whether we have the storm sewer capacity to handle any overflow, is that something the board can do? And if so, at what point would that be appropriate for the board to make that request?
Martha, could you respond? I'm not from the legal perspective, but what would be the right time to do that?
It would have been quite similar to the time that we brought
Okay.
Joe Fishinger.
Is that
up.
your understanding too?
Well, I think, yeah, we already had the stormwater testimony from the engineer and our engineer representing the board. And when I say representing the board, they're like a jury. They decide, but she facilitates, as all the board professionals do, facilitate the board's making an informed decision.
So I believe we did have testimony of the stormwater report that none of us had received. So in light of that, I would think,
Remember, we found out it was only the
How
minutes
could
plan
we-
was online, not the
how
report.
could we have known in advance whether it would be necessary to get an independent expert or not, since we were not provided with the report?
I think this, if the management report wasn't provided in an official packet. I think it was just the maintenance was what we received. Is that correct?
But we received.
But now we have
A
it.
very large report that was not given to us.
We have a management.
Prior
And we
to
received
testimony of their.
we received this in the interim, but since the
No.
last
It
meeting.
was posted on the website.
The stormwater management report and the maintenance plan were both submitted by the applicant.
Right.
Many months ago. I think it came to light at our last hearing in September that the maintenance plan was available on the municipal website. I don't believe, for whatever reason, that internally the management report was made available online.
I don't know if.
My understanding was that was
Ms.
going to be
Davitt
rectified.
circulated or not, to the board members.
Yeah, I think there was a glitch in there because the cover page looked very similar. So I think that they might have been in.
She didn't circulate it until after the meeting.
At the first meeting, but since that time, well before this meeting, it was
Yes.
circulated. Okay. So again, we've addressed stormwater management. I wouldn't disagree with Ms. Callahan that certainly if that was something that was desired, the issue, would be raised before we concluded the testimony.
I think it's on the website now.
The issue of if you had any questions about it, yes.
So if a member
At
of
this-
the public wanted to bring their own experts, they're welcome to do so at a future meeting.
Again, members of the public are free to bring witnesses, as I said. And we can and address that with the applicant if and when that happens. You don't only have to testify yourselves, you can bring witnesses. If they're pertinent and qualified experts or what have you.
Okay, thank you.
Nothing I said there you would disagree with, Mr. Levine?
Certainly not. It was all
Okay.
correct.
Thank you.
Well, this was correct and I agree with it, so hopefully it was
I
correct.
move to adjourn. We'll be back next Wednesday. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Good night.
They just came in and we did give them, I think.
Yeah, that's fine.
So I do. I read it.
Yeah, it would have helped us understand the testimony.